everybody. I
And you can share.
Okay.
They're not cookies, but
I brought the cookie maker, but she left her oven home.
I cookie maker.
Okay, you guys are live on YouTube and you're being recorded.
Thank you. So 6 PM, are we good to go? Okay. So first item on the agenda, I'd like to call this evening's meeting to order at 6 PM. Couple of administrative issues. So I've been advised that we are live, so keep your emotions in check and watch your language. Secondly, this would be an ideal time to silence your phones, please. Next item on the agenda is a roll call. I don't even know if this is still pertinent, but we'll go through it. Diorio is here. Relowitz is here.
Keith Winslow is here.
Lights here.
Shamshinia here.
Very good, thank you. You're here.
Pennybackers.
Absolutely. Next item on the agenda is a pre-roll. This is our perceived attendance for the upcoming September 1st meeting. I plan to be here. I plan to be here as well.
Keith Winslow, I plan to be here.
Light, yes.
Emily Shamshinia, I plan to be here.
Outstanding, thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. It would be for the regular meeting of July 7th, please.
This is Ron Perlitz. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes for July 7th.
I have a motion.
Carolyn Light, second.
I have a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Perlitz, yes.
Diorio, yes.
Winslow, yes.
Light, yes.
Shamshinia, yes.
Very good. Next item on the agenda is a minute approval extension request pursuant to RIGO 42467 B1, July 21st, 2021 special meeting.
Hello. This is also a good time to tell everyone who has come in after I gave this directive that if you stand up here, you have to be as close to the mic as possible, or else it will not pick up what you're saying. It will make doing the minutes very difficult for me. So please don't. So I'm making a request to have an extension to file the minutes from the 21st. I'm just beginning them now. I finished the minutes from the 7th very recently. This will not impact anyone's ability to view the minutes as they're in progress. It just gives me more time than what I currently would have to have them entered.
Very good, thank you. Refresh my memory. Do we need to act on this formally, or is this an administrative advisement?
I believe that the last time that I brought this up, because this is the second time that I've made this request. The first time, I believe you had to state the reason why, which is just to give me more time to be able to do the minutes. I don't remember if there was a motion with it. Do you remember, Maggie?
I don't believe it was.
Okay.
Is that working?
So simply noted. Okay, very good, thank you. Next item on the agenda is old business. There is none. Talia has advised you about the microphones. Please be cognizant of that. And then we're,
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
yes, of course.
I was thinking about this, as the more controversial subjects come up for our attention, and the audience is more aware of the open meetings, there may be a potential for being overcrowded. And we have a contingency plan, so if we get overcrowded, we can just pack up and move to one of the schools or.
I might direct that to Mr. Lampier. I'm pretty sure the answer is no, but I'll let him address that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. It is a little difficult to do that on the fly. I know historically, something like that was done once when I went into the minutes. You probably recall that yourself when exit one there was some sort of a public workshop, and I think the meeting immediately shifted to the Ashaway School. I don't know that we really can do that right now. I think that's impractical. So out of an abundance of caution, I suppose we can have these meetings at the school somewhere, either Shara Hole or one of the elementary schools, but kind of tough to plan for that on the fly.
Okay, thank you.
There was discussion in advance. So the balancing act there is trying to determine how many folks might be in the audience. You don't necessarily want to set up the school for no good reason, for 20 or 25 people. By the same token, controversial projects can swing either way, and suddenly you end up with a room of, 100 people. I understand the concern.
I was thinking that the workload is so intense for Jim and Talia that if we have to push it off to another meeting, it makes their workload even more.
Yep.
So,
I understand.
anyway, thank you, Jim.
Point well taken. Okay, so once again, next item on the agenda is new business. Administratively, there are a total of 5 applications. I am going to submit notices of recusal for the first 4. Yeah, I understand. Roll of the dice. So on the High Street Solar, this is a client of mine. Pine Gate Renewable is one of my clients. This project is wrapping up, so I'm simply recusing because they are a client. Palmer Circle 1, I have nothing to do with that project, but Pine Gate Renewables was a client or is a client of mine, although I'm not involved with that. And the Bergen minor subdivision and the Wood minor subdivision are projects that I am actively involved with. So I am submitting notices of recusal to Talia, and I would be asking Emily to take the reins on these upcoming 4 applications, please.
Thank you.
I think so.
Hand them off to you, Laura. Look at the box. See, now I'm sorry, I understand it.
Wonderful.
Music stops.
There's we have a 5-second lag, everyone, just so you know, on the video in case you want to take back anything. It looks like it's lagging us by about 5 seconds. Okay. The first item under new business, amendment to an approved plan, development plan review, photovoltaic solar energy system, High Street Solar AP4 Lot 2, 95 High Street Solar LLC applicant. Is the applicant present?
We are, so I'm here to present the mitigation plans. Where do you like the plan board set up for your ease of viewing?
I think we're recommending that location, yes. While you're getting set up, I'll just provide a little bit of background and ask Jim and Talia also to weigh in here. It says here on February 7th, 2018, the planning board approved this 998 kilowatt solar array project originally put forth by Oak Square Partners on a 7-acre parcel, which is AP4 Lot 2 off High Street. The current developer is Pine Gate Renewables LLC. The developer is requesting the board to approve an amendment of the approved plan with the addition of a landscape plan. So the planning board has in our packet some recent correspondence about that and the landscape plan.
My name is Kelly Conley. I'm a landscape architect with Terra Inc. Out of Boston, Massachusetts. I'm here to talk to you a bit about the plans that were developed under the request of Pine Gate Renewables. Is it possible that I could start with Palmer and then go to High, because they're very similar projects? Or is that a problem? Because I can start in whatever way you would prefer.
We can reverse that. Let me just introduce the Palmer
Sure.
Circle one
Great.
then first, okay? So the second item under new business, this is a unique situation since the applicant appears to be the same, or the representative discussing the applications for both of these projects are the same individual. So we're going to take them out of order as they appear on the agenda. So I'm now on item 2 under new business, amendment to an approved plan, development plan review, photovoltaic solar energy system, Palmer Circle 1, which is AP 11, lot 47D, 65 Palmer Circle Solar LLC applicant. And it's my understanding that what's before the planning board today for each of these applications is very similar. It's an amendment to the approved plan with the addition of a landscape plan in both cases.
Correct.
So you're going to be talking about Palmer Circle 1 first.
I will. So
Great.
again, I'm Kelly Conley. I'm the landscape architect that was retained to recreate the remediation plans due to the fact that there had been a contractor who's no longer on the projects who aggressively cleared areas outside of the fence on the project area. So specifically this area, I just don't know if this is going to reach that far. Oh, it does. Is right here. This is the entry drive in. This is the solar field. This is Palmer Circle. The turnaround is on this side, and then this is the remediated planting. So the goal was to use native species that would provide both tree canopy, evergreen coverage, shrubbery, proper perennial and grasses that would then recreate a biome that is useful for the renaturalization of this area, since the goal is to have that buffer be sort of more of a grassland. It was supposed to be saplings and cutlings that regrew over time. This was reviewed by Crossman Engineering, and they have acknowledged that this planting plan meets their expectation for proper remediation of the site. So with that, I would open up to any questions that you have for me about the planting or the plant material or anything that is shown on the plan.
Could you show us where the abutter is? It's not pertinent to the landscaping, but it could be. There's an abutter that has some viewage issues to the black sledding.
So is that on the south side? I believe the butter was requesting that we remove. the
Correct.
privacy slats. Yeah, that's totally fine. We can use those. That has nothing to do with this side of the fence. That's the opposite side.
I know.
Oh, sorry.
Well, in my mind, after seeing the site, the abutters request, seeing the plans, I thought that the black slats are put there for a purpose. It's a request that's mirrored in other projects. And if I was in a butter, I would be asking for landscaping.
Is that what they were requesting? From my knowledge, they were.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Just before you go any further, if you're to comment, please
Okay,
come to
sorry.
the microphone.
My name's Matt Abbott. I work with Pine Needle Removals. I'm a project manager for these sites. The abutter, from my understanding of it, is the abutter wants the privacy slats removed. Did they-
Correct.
Did they request the landscape buffer as well? or they
No,
just want-
no.
Okay, so is the question just to remove the
It's just
privacy
an
slats? I'm totally. okay with
Overall
that.
thought for the
Yeah.
planning board. I know what the abutters are requesting, and
Yeah.
they're entitled to have what they want.
Right, absolutely. So if you guys are okay with us removing those, I have no problem removing them. That's a very easy, quick fix. As long as that, it is an amendment to the plans, per the request.
I don't want to jump off the landscaping.
Okay.
What I'm suggesting is that the landscaping continue to the space where they are asking to have the black slats removed. Because as I said, this is a purpose that's mirrored in other projects. There's one right next door to you guys, Palmer Circle 2. Same thing's going to happen there. And rather than create a precedent of I want this and I don't want that, the landscaping buffer is the best option for all parties involved. So maybe they're being conservative in their request, but I'm asking for the board to consider that a possibility. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm dragging something out where it doesn't need to be dragged out.
Peter, I'm just confused. What was approved back in 2018 And whatever the abutter said, we want to respect that, but was that just passed through to you, or is that a formal request to the board, or?
No, that's my observation.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't from the abutter.
Right.
In 2018, we requested that the black slats be put in place. Right? I read their communication and I get completely what they're saying, but having those removed isn't necessarily the only solution to the problem. Okay. I've had no communication with the abutters. That's
Yeah, I
my observation.
that request, or not even request, that knowledge came to us pretty recently that they wanted those black slats removed. No reasoning behind it that we are aware of. If anything, that allows them to see into the site.
Yep, they don't
more
object
so.
to it.
So if they don't object to that, and if there's no request for landscaping on their end, we would probably go off just a request to remove the slats and not add landscaping to that, because that whole southern side is a pretty extensive, large part of the project. But I do understand the concern of them possibly in the future.
All right, the next homeowner can come in and say, I want black slats, and then we're back to 2018. Bring it forward 2021, when landscaping is the solution we prefer in the community for everybody. But if you know, I get it, they haven't requested it, it's not up for consideration. My observation, that's it. I'm trying to be thoughtful. Neighbor,
Yep, no, absolutely.
it's my neighborhood too.
Just, do I have to turn this on, Talia, or are you gonna be able to hear
No,
this?
it should be on already, but it would be the preference for everyone to state their name for the reference.
Okay, this is John. I see both sides of it. So in the letter was highlighted the section where it says, Mr. Bedoya moved to amend the motion to include more vegetative screening for the fence area facing the nearest residence to the south. And Mr. Prelwitz seconded the motion. But in their letter itself, they said they were satisfied with the original fence. So if they were satisfied, they were satisfied.
Okay.
I think Jim had,
Yes.
Nope.
Madam Chairman, if I can interject, Jim Lanford, Town Planner. I rode by site this afternoon again, just to get a last look at it. And I also saw what the motion was when the original approval was done. The Doyer asked for additional screening. That might have been appropriate at that moment in time. As we went through the construction process, we had serious stormwater issues that needed to be rectified. And so we worked across an engineering on that, and we made adjustments such that there really isn't any room to put additional landscaping along that southern border. And so I looked at it today, and I really, my observation was that, first of all, the property line is very, very close to the fence. So there's very, very little room between the property line and the fence to even put any landscaping if the board was to order it. Number two, in that area, natural vegetation is revegetated such that I believe that's doing the job.
Yeah.
There's actually a couple of pine trees there too, up close to the road, which are kind of screening it. If you were to add any additional landscaping, it would probably have to be put on Mr. Wilcox's property.
Okay.
And I don't know if Mr. Wilcox, I've talked with him numerous times over the years, and just recently last week. He seems to be fine just removing the slats. His reasoning for removing the slats is that when you put the slats in, it forms a barrier, like a wall. And when they're not there, he says, I can almost see right through it and the fence becomes invisible. He said, moreover, the panels themselves are above the fence anyway. So those slats really do nothing to screen.
They highlight this.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say, I can speak to Mr. Wilcox and Mrs. Wilcox, that they're fine just taking the slats out. And then, like I say, I can see, even over the last year, I can see where the existing vegetation has filled in quite nicely. And it's even gonna be enhanced more so as we go along. But I think, I'm not so worried about that side. More worried about this right here. And also too, where you come down from these plantings, You'll notice that the fence goes very, very close to the road on the circle.
You're talking right here?
Yeah, and there really wouldn't be much of an opportunity to put additional plantings there. It would probably be ruined by, let's say, our DPW staff when they're plowing and whatnot. It's very, there just isn't much room there. So I think the best opportunity to screen this project is where the applicant is proposing to put it.
Bravo.
Are there any other questions about the plantings or the type of material that we were using? And I'll move on to the next one.
Next.
Actually, yeah, I do have one, oh, sorry, this is John, one more question. So Jim pointed it out, that's a retention pond there. So there will be no screening in that area at all? Is that,
Right here.
yeah, is the area above it used for maintenance access or something?
I believe, and you can correct me, Matt, that is just the grass that's revegetated in that area around the pond, correct? Because you have the swale here with the check dams that come in. So that area would still have the seed mix that was specified per your original order for restoration of the solar field itself.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
Before we move on to the next one, I just want to pause and see if there are any questions from the public about this first project that we're looking at on Palmer Circle. Okay, looks like we're good to move on.
Madam Chair, if I could just suggest that maybe before we move on, we take a formal vote on the minutes of this plan.
Sure.
Whether to approve that landscape plan and also whether to approve the removal of the slats.
Sure.
So we don't confuse the project.
Good idea. We can close this one out before we move on. So we actually have a draft motion provided by our solicitor. I think that when someone's ready to make this motion, we just need to think about adding to the order at the end here a note about removing those black slats. Like we just discussed, I think that needs to be specified, which is what the planner just recommended. So if there's no further discussion from the planning board on this, I think we're ready to hear a motion.
All right, this is Keith here. Keith Wendell over here. Make a motion. Make a motion to approve Palmer Circle Solar LLC landscape amendment. Findings of fact, number one, on April 4th, 2018, the planning board approved this 998 kilowatt solar array project for plat 11, lot 47D. During the course of construction, the town planner identified a substantial deviation from the approved landscape plan in that excessive clearing had taken place. Planner directed the project owner to develop and submit a new landscape plan for revegetation. On September 12th, 2020, a neighboring property owner submitted a letter of concern regarding the addition of black slats to the chain link fence and requested that the slats be removed. Number four, Crossman Engineering conducted peer review of the proposed landscape plans and found them to be inadequate on 2 occasions. 5, the project owner incorporated Crossman Engineering's recommendations in its landscape plan dated July 23rd, 2021. Crossman recommends approval of the July 23rd plans. Number 6, the planning board finds that the proposed landscape plan adequately addresses the over clearing. Conclusions of law. Authority is vested in the planning board to ensure compliance with previously approved site plans. Order. Number 1, the landscape plans dated July 23rd, 2021 are hereby approved and the project's approval is amended. 2, the project owner is directed to install the landscaping plantings during fall 2021 in sufficient time to allow acclimation prior to winter. Number 3, the project owner shall maintain the plantings with the appropriate amount and frequency of watering and fertilization and shall replace any plants that die. And then number 4, they shall remove the black slats.
On the southern portion, per the request of the Wilcox.
You want to
Family?
amend your motion, Keith? To
Yeah.
specify.
Number 4, what am I saying? The project owner shall remove the black slats on the southern portion of the property as requested by the Wilcox family.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Emily Shamshinia, yes.
Ron Crowley, yes.
Keith Lindelof, yes.
Carolyn Light, yes.
John Pennypacker, yes.
Okay, 5 yeses. Okay, so the motion passes on Palmer Circle. We're ready to move on to High Street Solar.
Once again, I'm Kelly Conley from Terra Inc. I'm the landscape architect that was retained to, again, remediate some overclearing that, similar to Palmer Circle, was done by a contractor who's no longer on the project. This area of High Street is, there's a neighbor here, there's a neighbor here, and then this is High Street. This is the access way into the solar field. The area that was impacted is right here, where there had been some vehicles and things in that area over the course of time. It also had been cleared, as we mentioned. There was a lot of shrub material in there, some tree material. So in the same venue as we did for Palmer Circle, this is a mix of deciduous and evergreen trees, deciduous shrubbery, perennials, and grasses to restore a living biome for nature and sort of just general remediation within the site. This also was reviewed by Crossman Engineering and found to be compliant to what they deemed a good remediation. With that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Questions from planning board members?
I have none.
Questions from the public? Leonard?
This time, Janet, I'd like to mention that the approved plan called for a gravel crushed stone driveway. And I'm a little unsure, I'll let the applicant speak on this themselves, but that's what the approved plan called for. There has been some back and forth indecision as to whether they want to change that, whether they don't. Today, I received a letter from the Ashaway Fire Marshal. And I can read it to the board. This letter is written to confirm that the access road to the site at 95 High Street, Ashaway, RI 02804, is up to standards needed for the fire department needs. The existing pavement and gravel repair will allow easy access to and from the site. Due to the weight of most of our fire vehicles and the extreme slope of this access road, an excessive amount of gravel could sink the vehicle and make the road inaccessible or dangerous to travel down a road. The width of the road is also adequate for travel of large fire trucks and construction vehicles. If you have any questions, please contact the station number or email and reference the site address. I would suggest that to get through this, that the board direct the applicant to construct this access road to the satisfaction of the fire marshal. And I say, now that seems kind of broad, but I'm trying to avoid having to come back to the planning board again. And the fire marshal's letter here wasn't exactly as precise as what we'd like to see it. It doesn't mention a specific width, although the approved plan called for a 15-foot wide, like I said, crushed stone entrance. This doesn't really confirm that. So that would be my advice: is that the applicant leave here tonight, work with Crossman. Doug Allen from Crossman Engineering is there. He can come up and talk about the access road as well. We'll let the developer express what their intent is to do with the access road. I don't want to speak for you. I don't know exactly how you want to make changes out there, but as I suggested to you in email, you should tell the board what the approved plan called for and how you want to change that, so we get that straightened out.
So again, my name is Matt Abbott. I'm a project manager with Pine Gate Renewables. The plan originally showed to leave the existing pavement on the road and repair it as needed with crushed gravel. If you look at the bottom left-hand photo, that's one of the most current up-to-date pictures. If you look along the left side of the road, there's a diversion gravel swale that was put in for runoff. Yep. And then minor gravel repairs throughout the road, nothing crazy. And the bottom of the road has a crushed gravel that's been compacted for a turnaround as well. I've met the fire marshal out on site to install a knockbox, and he was okay with how the road was existing, and was very adamant to me that any more crushed gravel added to it could be dangerous for their fire vehicles, with especially their water truck, which filled up with, I think he said 50,000 gallons of water, would create substantial rutting and get them stuck at the base and on the roadway as well due to the extreme slope. We're hoping that we can amend the plans per his letter. I can also get him to update that letter to express a width that he is required as well. I can get that to you guys hopefully within the next week or so. Any questions, please feel free.
Thank you very much. Questions?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I asked the applicant to bring this forward tonight because I wanted to take care of all the possible amendments in one shot. But in the event that we didn't have to come back for an amendment to the landscape plan, I probably would have approved this administratively anyway, because whatever the fire people want, that's what they should have. So I would do it as a minor amendment administratively anyway, but I figured as long as they're here tonight, their opportunity to run it by the board.
Very good. Anyone have questions? Okay, so our proposed motion on this should specify, just very briefly, constructing the access road according to the Ashway Fire Marshal specifications.
Are we allowed to include that? Are we allowed to make any judgment on the access road? Because it wasn't.
So the question is whether or not we're allowed to act upon it. And so I just had a conversation with the planner about that. And because it has been advertised as amendment to an approved plan and didn't specify limited to the landscaping, I believe it's appropriate for you to go ahead.
Good question. Thanks. All right, we're ready to entertain a motion, I think.
This is Keith Lindelof. I move to approve the amendment to approve development plan, High Street Solar LLC, 95 High Street, AP lot, AP4, lot 2. Number one, on February 7th, 2018, the planning board approved this 998 kilowatt solar array project for plot 4, lot 2. During the course of construction, is this the right one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
During the course of construction, the town planner identified a deviation from the approved landscape plan in that excessive clearing had taken place. The planner directed the project owner to develop and submit a new landscape plan for revegetation. 3, Crossman Engineering conducted peer reviews of the proposed landscape plans and found them to be inadequate on 2 occasions. Number 4, the project owner incorporated Crossman Engineering's recommendations in its landscape plan dated July 23rd, 2021. Crossman recommends approval of the July 23rd plans. 5, the planning board finds that the proposed landscape plans adequately address the overclearing. Conclusions of law. Authority is vested in the planning board to ensure compliance with previously approved site plans. Order. Number 1, the landscape plans dated July 23rd, 2021 are hereby approved and the project's approval is amended. 2, the project owner is directed to install the landscape plantings during fall 2021 in sufficient time to allow acclimation prior to winter. 3, the project owner shall maintain the plantings with the appropriate amount and frequency of watering and fertilization and shall replace any plants that die. Number 4, construct access road according to Ashway Fire Marshal specifications.
Wonderful. Thank you. We have a motion,
This is Ron, I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Shamshiniya, yes.
Rollins, yes.
Lindelof, yes.
Light, yes.
Penny Packer, yes.
Motion passes 5 yeses. Thank you.
Thank you. It's so nice to see you all in person after being in Zoom
All right.
for so long. It's great.
You should have brought dinner.
No kidding. Appetizers.
Plans and dinner. Yes. All right, next, under new business, pre-application, 2-lot minor subdivision, Bergen Minor, AP 19, Lot 8, 0 Spring Street, William and Susan Bergen applicants. So just to introduce this application, since it's a pre-application meeting here, the planning board will just informally exchange ideas with the applicant and no vote will be taken.
Yes, good evening. My name is Bill Bergen. I'm here representing myself and my wife. Currently live on Dye Hill Road. What we are bringing to you is the pre-approval of the subdivision of a 30-acre lot that abuts Grassy Pond and Spring Street. It was previously a proposal by the previous owner for a 5-lot subdivision. All the wetlands were previously permitted by DEM. All of them have expired. We've recently done the wetland determination on one of the original proposed lots of that original 5-lot subdivision that we would like to use as part of this new proposal. In it, we would come up with 2 lots, one which would conform to the zoning application process of a 2-acre lot and another lot which would be 28 acres. With that 28-acre lot, we would like to put in a deed provision that allows for no more subdivision of that lot. And that would be locked at 28 acres, as open space. Pretty much what we're proposing.
Thank you very much. Planning board have questions?
No questions at this point.
I have none. It sounds pretty straightforward.
No one has any problems with anything as proposed currently?
No, I'll just ask to clarify. This is John. You mentioned at the end that this is all going to remain. The idea is this is the last time you're going to divide it. This is going to just stay.
That would be once it's split into that 1 2-acre parcel and a 28-acre parcel, that 28-acre parcel, even though there are, as you can see in your package,
Mhm.
there's plenty of land we don't want to do that. We want a deed provision put in that parcel can never be split up again.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank
I
you.
think we'd be very supportive of that. Kudos.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Checking stuff off the list here. All right. All right, again, under new business, pre-application, a 4-lot minor subdivision, Wood Minor, AP 5, Lot 80, 179A, Alton Bradford Road, Christopher P. Wood applicant. Again, because this is a pre-application meeting, there's just an informal exchange of ideas and no vote.
You have a much larger one, we can open up. Good evening, my name is Chris Wood, and I'm the owner of the property here. Thank you for, I'm sorry. I'm the owner of the property at 179 Alton Bradford Road. And I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to come in and talk about my project. There's a project narrative that's in your packet. You may or may not have seen that, but I'd like to go through some of the highlights of it. First thing on the property, it's on the west side of Route 91, Alton Bradford Road. It's 9.1 acres. There are two longstanding existing structures on the property, one single-family home and another unfinished home that have been there since the 40s. Also two small outbuildings. It's currently zoned as a duplex according to the town tax card. The elevation range of the property is 95 to 116 feet. In the area of wetlands, there's a small stream and an associated small wooded swamp, which has been delineated by ecotones and mapped by Alfred Diorio. There are no proposed alternations or encroachments of any wetland area in my proposal. As far as the soil, it's Canton type soil in the proposed building and septic system locations, free of groundwater complications. Elevations have been completed by Al Diorio, deemed generally suitable for individual system. The zoning of the property. The project requires no zoning variances, meets all the frontage and lot area zoning requirements. The frontage is 1,144 feet. It's consistent with the character and current residential use of the area. Now, there's a couple of potential questions I'd like to try to address that you may have. Lot 3, which is the lot that has the two existing structures on it. As I said, it's zoned as a duplex on the tax card. The new proposal would require an additional area for Lot 3 in order to continue to be a duplex. I've been in discussions with the abutting property owner to the north. We haven't come to a conclusion on that, but that may well come to pass. If it doesn't, we're happy to consider that property as a single-family property as it's currently being used, it's zoned as a duplex. So we'll come to a conclusion on that in the next several weeks, if not the next month, with the owner of that property as to whether this would remain as a duplex or a single family. In the area of driveways, I've discussed driveway options with Al Diorio. We don't have a specific plan yet for the driveways on the 3 lots we're proposing. And finally, on the map that you have there, you see there's a small area of encroachment on the north side of the property. There's a portable shed there and some equipment. I have discussed the options with Al about how to handle that, but we have not made any specific moves yet. I think that's all the information I wanted to present to you. I'll open that up for questions.
Thank you very much. Questions from planning board?
I'll go. Mine's just sort of a weird. With non-conforming uses, my understanding is once they're no longer being used, how does that, I'm not sure how that actually plays out. So if it were a business, it were a car dealership and it had been abandoned for 5 years, no one was selling cars out of that place, you can't, you lose that non-conforming. How does,
Go ahead.
I don't know how exactly that plays out. So once the property stops being used in a non-conforming way, can you restart in the same non-conforming way?
Can I assume you're referring to the second dwelling?
Yeah, yes, the duplex.
Second dwelling was never finished inside.
Which is why I asked. So
Right, so
Yeah, so I don't know.
It looks like a house, but it's not a
It
house.
definitely does. It has a roof and a separate meter and such. I can only defer as a non-expert in any of
And
this.
that's why I'm asking, because I don't want to speak out of turn or overstep.
Yes. Jim Lincoln, town planner. I have a email from the deputy zoning official on this. It says, good morning, Jim. Tony and I have looked at this proposed subdivision and do not have any objection. As this is a pre-existing non-conforming development, due to the fact that there are two dwellings on this project, the proposed subdivision will not increase the non-conformity. Proposed lots 1, 2, and 4 will be in conformance with the current zoning regs for the RFR 80 zoning district, and will not demonstrate an increase of the non-conformity of lot 3, as it will retain the required dimensional requirements for a two-family and be allowed under the provisions of section 8A, continued existence of a non-conforming development. And again, our zoning ordinance, section 8A, allows for the continued existence. Says here, any use, activity, structure, building, sign, or other improvement lawfully existing at the time of the adoption or subsequent amendment of the zoning ordinance, but which is non-conforming by use or non-conforming by dimension under the terms of this ordinance or subsequent amendment thereto, shall be permitted to continue. This shall not exempt the non-conforming development from the regulations of this or other town ordinances, state statutes, or common law requirements requiring that property be used so as not to create a nuisance. Let me know if you have any additional questions or concerns. Sherry Desjardins, deputy zoning official.
So the existence of the structure qualifies as the use, right? It's irrelevant if someone's actually in there.
That's their determination in that department, that there's two buildings on the property. As the gentleman just stated there, that if you look at the car, it says two family on the car. I don't know what they're paying for taxes or anything over here, but it's just, there's two buildings on the property that been there since, like I said, 40s. It's non-conforming.
Right.
And they are giving the appropriate frontage to this and twice the area, which is called for a duplex. So,
Cool. Just
yeah, a good question.
checking.
That's why that same question.
All right.
Well, I researched it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jim, one question. So it will continue to be non-conforming.
Yes, it will not increase the non-conformity.
Okay. Okay.
I have a
If it
question.
was a duplex, if it was a brand new duplex being built today on that property, it would be conforming because you have the frontage, you have double the area. That's what a duplex requires. Now, this is not typically what you consider a duplex because they're separate buildings, they're not attached. But, so I don't know that our zoning official looked at it as a duplex. It was viewed as a non-conforming situation. So,
Just a quick question. You mentioned working with the property owner to the north to potentially exchange land or obtain additional. Can you describe what you need the extra land for again? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, I think it is on the map. I can go over there. I know it's in the area of 6,800 square feet, 60 by 100.
And you need it, why do you need?
Because I need 2 acres for each of the lots.
Yep.
Other lots, 1, 2, and 4. And then I need double that, 4 acres for the duplex lot. So altogether, I'm 6,800 approximately feet short.
Okay, so that would affect the lot adjacent to this land that you're considering obtaining.
It would. It's a large parcel and it would affect him. It would be, excuse me. I think it's showing on the map here. I'm talking about, it's not on this particular map. You should have it. an area, we're talking about an area along the back line of the property.
Oh, I see it shaded
I'm
here.
sorry, this
Yeah.
isn't the proper map to show you that.
Yeah. So if we all look at the shaded part here, right?
Yes, correct. So it's a long
Gotcha.
skinny piece. It's all wooded back there anyway. It's just a matter of.
Understood. I didn't realize that that was the shading on the map corresponded to what you're talking about, but I get it. I see that now. Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
If I could add one thing that might help somebody understanding, that the property prior to subdivision has the two dwelling units, they're deemed dwelling units, even though one is not currently being used. So that's why it's non-conforming, you have two dwelling units on one single lot. In order for it to continue to remain non-conforming as to those two dwelling units, you can't increase the non-conforming. And so you would need to have that minimum lot size for the two dwelling units. If you were less than that and he was proposing this, you'd say, no, you're increasing non-conformity by dimension, and so you can't do that. So that's why he's been doing that, either that or it becomes a single family dwelling, which is perfectly conforming.
Right.
Or with an accessory structure.
Great, that's plan B, if you will.
Okay.
If we aren't able to reach an agreement that's satisfactory to you all and to the town and to the other owner, of course.
Okay. Thank you. That was helpful. Any other questions, comments? Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you very much. Oh,
Appreciate your
Sharon,
time.
you have to go over to the microphone. Sorry.
We all set?
Yeah, it's for you, it's for you, a question for you. You said you're gonna have 4 lots, but if you give this extra here, then is that duplex gonna be two buildings, and so you really will have 5 residences on 4 lots?
If you look here, yes, that is correct. That is correct.
But you're not asking for 5 residences,
No.
you're just asking for 4 lots.
That's right. There would be a home here. There's already 2 buildings here, which is what we've been talking about. A new home here. Is that it?
Yeah, so you're not asking for residents, you're just asking for 4 lots. You're not asking for 5 residents. You're asking for 4 lots. And one of those lots may be a.
Maybe a duplex if we're able to have the correct square footage.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I do have a question.
Last
The
call.
shaded area, if the owner of that property doesn't decide with you and sell a property, is that a deal breaker from your subdivision?
No.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I think we're ready for Chairman Diorio to return.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda, a preliminary plan, public hearing, Brushy Brook. 140 unit comprehensive permit. AP 32 lots, 1, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17, 21, 23, 25, 27, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, 40, 41, 42, 44, 46, 48, 50, 52, 54, 56, 58, 60, 62, 63, 65, 67, 68, 69, 70, and 71. Located at 130 and 0 Dye Hill Road, 0 Brushy Brook Drive, 0 Wedge Road, 0 Green Lane, LR6-A owner LLC, and Realty Financial Partners applicant. This is a public hearing. I'll entertain a motion to open said hearing.
Make a motion to open the hearing.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Diorio, yes.
So yes.
Yes.
Light, yes.
Shamshini, yes.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Diorio, members of the board. Bill Landry, representing LR6A LLC, the owner and applicant on this application. I think Mr. Diorio is the only surviving member of this application. The first iteration of this, when it was first introduced to the board, and went through almost a year of monthly public meetings at the master plan level. The master plan approval was issued in December of 2010 and remains in effect under the state vesting laws. We made a preliminary plan submission that has been deemed complete. And we are here tonight to sort of reintroduce the project to everybody, expecting that, you know, there's very little institutional memory of this project beyond the chair, who I'm sure remembers it very well, but there are certain core pieces of it that I think we should maybe bring back to the surface to create, you know, better familiarity with what's going on here. We've got a very, very large site at 358 acres. The original application before the planning board in 2009 was for a 300-unit residential development that had a single-family component to it and a small multifamily component at the entrance to the project site. During the course of the master plan proceedings, we modified the proposed master plan to eliminate the multifamily units toward the entrance and to have entirely single-family. Proposed density was reduced from 300 units to 270 units. The board heard maybe one of the most extensive public informational meeting processes ever. I believe there were 11 or 12 before it was all over. Uncharacteristic of the master plan stage until lately, there was extensive engineering testimony, peer review on virtually every issue. GZA was here many of those months, peer reviewing, Decreed Engineering and other engineering and technical professionals, wetland scientists and so forth, traffic consultants, on virtually every major impact on in the case. The proposed individual septic systems, the proposed individual wells, the location of the units, existence of units around the perimeter of the site at the edge of the Arcadia management area, the fiscal impacts discussed concerning the schools. Very, very exhaustive record. And at the end of that, in the decision approving the project, the planning board went to great lengths to identify the various concerns that it had, and wrote that it could either reject the project or approve the project at a substantially lower density that, in the view of the board, would be protective, mitigative, and protective, and in some cases eliminate 100% the concerns that the planning board had of the larger project. And so what we have here is an approval that has 6 conditions, 6 or 7 conditions. I'll go through them in a moment.
And those conditions required a redesign of the project from a 270 unit project to what we're presenting now as a 140 unit project. The density condition that the planning board imposed was based on a formula. They didn't say you can have 140 units. They said you'll have to calculate what a yield plan would show is the permissible density on your 358 acres if you back out all of the unsuitable land. And once you've gotten to that base density, we will give you a 20% density bonus on top of that. And so the board estimated, I don't know, a number a little higher than what we wound up with this in terms of where the unit count could come out. We actually came out a little lower than that. When we calculated, as Mr. Prevey from Decreed Engineering will testify, and as it's shown on sheet 11 of the plan, it's got that whole calculation as to how we came out with the base density, then added the 24%. And in doing that and getting to it was actually 159 units, I believe, that we came out to, but we're only asking for 140 units is what we're asking, is what we're presenting here tonight. It could have been 149 based on the yield plan and the formula that the planning board came up with. We've got a much better plan, we think. We have average lot sizes of 28,000 square feet. And that allows us to preserve well over 70% of the site as open space. We actually are showing 256.8 acres of open space. And the one thing that allowed was that the units could be pulled away from the perimeter of there were units that were right on the boundary, houses that were right on the boundary. And in most cases now, there's at least 300 feet between the edge of the subdivision, between the nearest lots and houses and the Arcadia management area. It's usually well over 300 feet. I think the closest house to the management area is about 250 feet, which is a long way. The houses are all at the frontage of the lots, so even the distance from the subdivision to the distance, the buffering within the subdivision to the lots, then you've got the actual setbacks on the lots that are applied because the houses are right up near the road. So there's substantial extra buffer area there, and I think that's one of the things that the board had in mind in reducing the density. The other issues that the board discussed were community septics. They were concerned about individual septics. They required community septic systems. They also required community wells as opposed to individual wells. There was a lot of science back and forth throughout the proceedings. At the end of the day, the board said, look, these issues get a lot easier to decide if we knock the density down by more than half. So that's what we're going to do instead of taking chances with respect to these issues. Now, during the development of the preliminary plan over the last several years, we did come back to the planning board twice for guidance. There were no formal decisions, but we had decisions to make in putting that plan together. And one of the things we thought would be a better plan is if we went back to individual wells, septic systems. We thought we could create more open space that way and present a safe alternative. We, realized that that would require a waiver by the planning board of what we had been approved for. But we made what we thought was a good case for considering the merits of maybe, smaller lots and better site planning with individual and better control by the homeowners, individual homeowners rather than association. But the board was very clear with us that that's the way it was originally approved, common septics, common wells, and that was the planning board's clear preference going forward. We respect that. We, not laying down on a railroad track over that. We had some ideas on what might create a better project, but at the end of the day, we want to do what is the consensus of the planning board and how it was originally approved. So that's what you see on your plan, Eric. I think some people were having a little trouble seeing where the community well field is and how all that works. And Eric will help clarify those issues tonight. The same thing with respect to the permitting status at DEM of the on-site wastewater treatment community systems. The other thing we came back with was a question to the board as to the affordable units. There was a requirement in the original approval that there be 25% of the units as affordable units, and the plan contemplated all single-family units. We did come back and point out that we could create even more open space if we had some units, or perhaps many units, that were accessory apartments for the elderly, in-laws, single young people who didn't have a family yet and that felt there was a need. I think the affordable housing consultant boards, it resonated with them that there was a need in this community and other South County communities for rentals, one bedroom units. So we made a proposal of a couple of scenarios where we could have some of those units, a lot of those units, none of those units. And the clear consensus of the planning board was that they wanted to go the way the project was originally drawn up as a single family project. All single family dwellings as affordable units, and all single family dwellings as market rate units. There's no prohibition on those single family houses being rented, but the planning board did reject the notion of having accessory units count toward affordable housing. So that's the way we designed it, the way that consistent with the guidance that the planning board provided. With respect to the community wells, the Rhode Island Department of Health Center for Drinking Water Quality has issued an approval for the well field plan. They spent a lot of time, as Mr. Prevey will discuss, on siting of the well fields to minimize any potential impact to anybody outside of the subdivision. They take all kinds of things into consideration, and they have issued the approval for the community septic design parameters that appear on the preliminary plan drawings. As far as the approvals for the septics, the community septics, those are still under review by DEM. They have been for some time. Stormwater management plan that Eric will describe is also under review. Those permits have not yet issued under the state law applicable to regular subdivisions and the state law applicable to comprehensive permits that include low and moderate income housing. The actual DEM approvals are not required until the final approval plan stage, but obviously we've had to do all of the engineering for those designs, and Eric will explain to you in each of these cases, stormwater, community septics and wells, what the design parameters were and what were the issues that help us believe that that those plans will be approved by DEM. We'll know for sure when they issue the permits, and obviously there'll be no final approval here without further meetings and so forth to review that. But they've been designed in accordance with all DEM standards, the stormwater design manual, and all of DEM's regulations. In terms of the conditions, you know, I board could not have been clearer that they wanted the conditions all satisfied, and that they're not interested in having new or different kinds of conditions. So we're happy to say that the work that we've done permits us to satisfy all 6 of these conditions that appear at the beginning of the master plan approval. The first being that the approved density will be in the range of 93 to 116 single-family units to be determined by a proper yield calculation at the preliminary plan stage, plus a density bonus of 25% for affordable family housing to be awarded under the Hopkinton inclusionary zoning ordinance for a total of 116 to 145 units of single-family houses. As I mentioned, we're proposing 140. The second condition was the applicant shall reconfigure the development under our subdivision cluster regulation using 20,000 square feet, more or less, lots, so as to maximize the open space adjacent to the Arcadia management area, and so as to eliminate to the maximum degree possible house lots abutting the management area. 3, in accordance with our cluster regulations, the applicant shall provide public drinking water wells as proven infeasible, and communal septics with denitrification using open space for wells and septic in such a way as to achieve maximum feasible separation between wells and septic and minimum potential for pollution and nitrogen loading. Again, I've already discussed that issue. The fourth had to do with off-site improvements. We had testimony at the master plan stage from traffic consultants on off-site impacts on Sawmill Road, excuse me, on the bridges and culvert systems on Sawmill Road and Dye Hill Road. And we were asked to ensure that the bridges and the 2 culverts on Saw Hill Road were widened to a width of 22 feet. The edges were in very bad condition, and the widths were in those cases more closer to 15 or 16 feet than to 22 feet. We're also asked to do clearing of 2 feet on each side of the road, chip seal Sawmill Road and Dye Hill Road from 138 to the entrance to the property at Brushy Brook, and to implement certain monitoring and ongoing traffic monitoring improvements as shown in our traffic study from 2010, and then certain public improvements, striping, so forth, that were in a memo that the Public Works Director issued in January of 2010. And we have done all of those things. Now, a lot of things changed after the master plan approval was issued. The town actually implemented some of the recommendations that we had made. They resurfaced the road, Sawmill Road. They widened it, not just at the locations that we were required to widen it, but at most locations to accomplish substantially a 20-foot width. Striped it, put warning signs on, stop signs, and so forth. So a lot of what we were proposing to do has already been done. So what we submitted in our, with our preliminary plan submission is a March 22, 2021 memorandum, technical memorandum, 24 pages text, and the rest of charts and plans and photographs and so forth. But they looked at what the conditions were, condition number 4 on off-site improvements in the approval that I just described, and they identified what had already been, what part of that had already been done by the town, and what part of it remained to be done. Those areas near the culverts and so forth still need to be widened to 22 feet. There are things that are not adequately covered, some cracking and so forth. And so Beta made a series of recommendations in that memorandum as to what was left to be done to fully carry out that condition related to off-site improvements. The town, as an applicant, has actually applied to DEM to have the improvements approved. The town is the owner of the roads. Decreed Engineering submitted to the town a year ago, year and a half ago or so, the plans for the improvements. The town made the application to the DEM. It's authorized to do so by the town council and worked in a very cooperative fashion, presenting that to DEM. Those approvals are still pending at DEM, but it's our full and complete intention to carry out the conditions as set forth in the master plan to complete whatever's not already done out there and to make what's done out there better in the way described in the Beta technical memorandum. We don't have Beta here tonight. Our expectation was that we would present this program tonight to you, tell you what's different about it, take your questions and comments. Obviously, this is going to go to at least one more meeting, but perhaps have Beta available to answer questions at the next iteration that relates specifically to the off-site improvements. But I do think you'll find it's in your materials. I think it's pretty easy to follow. It's well documented with actual field conditions before and after the master plan approval and what the actual existing conditions are out there at this point. So unless there are any questions of me, I'm going to ask Eric Privy to introduce himself and take the board through the major changes in reference to the plan, major changes from what had been submitted at master plan, and to address in his own more professional technical terms how we're complying with the 6. I think he's going to talk about affordable housing. I think I covered that, but how we're dealing with the first 5 of the conditions that were established by this board in the approval that we're operating on. Sounds good.
Good evening. For the record, Eric Prevey, P-R-I-V as in Victor E. I'm a registered professional engineer with the Preet Engineering offices at 2 Stafford Court in Cranston, Rhode Island. I'm going to go through briefly, actually, as Attorney Landry had mentioned. It's probably not familiar to a lot of people, so I'm actually going to start real quickly at existing conditions, if that's helpful, and tell you what's out there today and kind of get us everybody to the site first. So a little awkward. I'll have to go back and forth, but I'll do my best here.
So just let me interrupt if I may. So once you leave that microphone, I'm concerned that we're not going to have recording capability.
I'll walk back.
I hate to interrupt your presentation,
I'll
but
get some minutes. I'll get some steps on my. I'll be all right.
those are the instructions that I was given.
Sounds good. Thank you. I want to make sure everybody can hear. I understand we're on YouTube too, so. So the property is located at, off of Dye Hill Road. There's approximately 640 linear feet of frontage along Dye Hill Road. It's a 358.04 acre parcel. It is zoned RFR 80. So as you know, that's 80,000 square feet minimum per lot area as the density. It is a mainly wooded site. Out of 358 acres, it's almost completely wooded. There is an existing gravel path that comes directly off of Dye Hill Road. There is an existing abandoned building that's on the property as well. There's also, and you can see it from the aerial image as well on sheet, I believe it's sheet 2, but on the aerial image, you can see the cut in of the original path. So there was an original development of the planned unit development. There was a loop road and a couple offshooting roads. And that was actually fully cut in and started to be constructed. So you can see that from the aerial. You can actually drive on it with like an SUV today, actually. So there is the gravel loop road that's throughout there as well. There are parcels that have the parcels abut the Arcadia management area. So along the northern area and the eastern area, that's all completely the Arcadia management area as well. There are several freshwater wetlands that are located on the site. They are shown directly on the existing conditions and on the proposed plans as well. We do have wooded swamp wetlands, and they have 50-foot perimeter wetlands shown with them. There are intermittent streams, and those have 100-foot riverbank wetlands with them as well. And there is also Brushy Brook in the southwest corner. That is a perennial stream that is greater than 10 feet wide, so that has a 200-foot riverbank wetland as well. All of those wetlands were delineated and verified by DEM wetlands. So they verified it under application number 18-0230, and that was in February of 2019. So those wetland areas are not going to move. Sometimes there's a discrepancy between what the wetland biologist flags and DEM. They are agreed upon, and those are the wetlands on the site as well. We did perform soil testing throughout the site as well. The pre-engineering did. They were all performed by a Class 4 licensed soil evaluator through the Department of Environmental Management. Very good sandy soils throughout and very suitable for development. Now I'm going to flip to the proposed. So I'm now looking at sheet 11, which is the kind of the overall plan. It shows everything all together. It's proposed as a 140 lot residential subdivision. As mentioned, all of the consensus was that single family lots would be preferred by the planning board. So we have 140 single family residential lots as the subdivision. It's accessed off of a P loop road with 2 offshoot roads as well. The roadway is designed for a 24-foot wide pavement. All of the lots are designed per the town's cluster regulations, which was a requirement of the master plan conditions. That allows for a minimum of 20,000 square feet per lot, 80 feet of frontage, 25-foot front yard, 20-foot side yard, and 40-foot rear yard setbacks as well. So although we allow down to 20,000, the average lot size on here is 28,000 square feet for the lots. So we felt that that was the right balance for providing the right amount for each lot, at the same time maximizing the open space that seemed to also be very important with the conditions of approval as well. We also looked at siting them farther away from Arcadia management area, as mentioned by Attorney Landry. So the lots are all positioned on the northern side. There's over 300 feet to the back of the lots. That's to the actual lot line too, not where the proposed limited disturbance is, but it's over 300 feet along the northern portion of it and over 250 feet along the eastern portion of it as well. That is a substantial change from the original 270 lot, which went directly along the outside. It effectively used that entire outside as well. So we've now pulled all of that away to provide a natural buffer, natural untouched buffer along the Arcadia management area as well. As for the front too, another very important aspect of it from the master plan discussions were with the abutters along Dye Hill Road. Those discussions of having the first lot, you can see the first lot is located over, at master plan, it was discussed at least 350 feet away from the nearest abutter. We are over 400 feet from the nearest rear property line of anybody along Dye Hill Road. The first lot is also 700 feet from over 700 feet from Dye Hill Road. So if you were coming in off of the street from Dye Hill Road, it was 700 feet before you saw the first lot on the right. The area is serviced by community wells and community septics, as was part of the master plan conditions of approval. We broke up the community systems into 7 community systems. So each system has 20 lots in the community systems, and we placed them throughout. I'm going to actually go up to the board. I won't talk for the moment, but I'm going to go up to the board. You can see them. They're phased per each phase, so each 20 units. So I'm going to quickly just go over and highlight where they're located. So I just highlighted on that plan as well. You can see them in the green highlighter that I just put on the board is there. So there's 7 locations. Each of those would have 20 of the house lots on them. And that was broken up to be able to have just kind of closer to the source and to spread out and dissipate throughout the site as well. On the community well, community public wells, we worked with PAR Corporation on PAR Corporation, engineering firm that worked through the Department of Health to come up with the siting of a well field area. So sometimes you see it where you get the exact location. We're going to put a well here, and that's what you get. You show the areas that are surrounding that area. We actually have it as a well field area over there. And the reason we did that is it's actually a 35-acre area that's located in the southeast corner down there. Actually, I'm going to go to the board real quick just to show you, just to make sure. So that's a 35-acre area. And the reason for that was just like any types of well drilling, you don't know what you're getting when you're getting into the ground. So we wanted to allow some flexibility to be able to have where we could put them on site. So that area has been approved by the Department of Health for the setbacks and siting of anything in that area. So they show that there's no septics, there's no septics and stormwater within infiltration within the 200 feet. And then it shows they do a 1,750 feet from that area. They look at any contaminants or anything in the surrounding area that may create issues for those wells. So that area has been approved by the Department of Health. That entire area has been approved. It is not our intention. It's our intention to drill only the wells that we need. So to drill a well within that 35-acre area, if we get a 5 gallons per minute, that would be great. Then we got to go to another well. Maybe we get a 10 gallons per minute. All that we need to be able to have for the withdrawal of the water that we need on site. That area allows us the flexibility to move it around depending on what we get when we're drilling. If we don't get a good yield at the first spot, we can move to another spot and so on. So that area has been fully approved as well. The other thing on that is those will only be drilled wells. So there'll be drilled wells and then just the access to the wells. It is not, we are not clear cutting that area. That's not 35 acres of open grass in that area. It is literally for drilling of wells and installing the pipe just to bring it to the distribution system. So it'd be very, very limited on what that disturbance would be out there. Just check my notes for a minute. We also wanted to site those away from the septic systems as well. That was an important part of what the conditions of approval said. Using these community systems, both septics and wells, to maximize the separation so that they're not near each other. So that's why that's located in the southeast corner. And then we distributed the septics throughout as well. So we looked to provide the greatest amount of separation. Also looking at the soils, because we want to put the septics in a proper location too, in a place that's going to have the most suitable soils to be able to have as well. I actually don't even, sorry. So yeah, I don't even recall what I just said again there, sorry. Yep. So the community septics are for 20 lots at a time for each phase. The septics also do have Advantex AX20 pods, so they do use the denitrification technology. So every house itself will have a septic system with an Advantex pod right next to it, and then has a pump that goes out to the force main that then goes to the community leach field. So that allows the denitrification directly on, and that's a 50% reduction with the Advantex as well. So that gets that down to 19 milligrams per liter for each of the lots as well. Stormwater has been designed for the town subdivision regulations. We actually have it as I mentioned, 24-foot pavement, and we have grass swales. So it runs off directly to the roadside grass swales along the outside. There's no closed pipe network other than limited areas to have cross culverts to get between the pipes, and then a little bit at the entrance as well to be able to have some extra water quality treatment with a storm scepter at the entrance as well. So that has been designed for the town's subdivision regulations with the roadside swales, has been designed for DEM's best management practices with low impact development. Again, the swales are part of that. Also, each of the homes is equipped with a dry well. So again, taking the roof runoff, taking it directly, putting it directly in and infiltrating directly on the site. So that's also an important one, to not have nuisance runoff going across the site as well. Each of the ponds has a forebay, has a water quality recharge as well. And then it has mitigation through either infiltration and or detention systems as well. So it's all mitigated to pre-development levels. So as required. So no increase in runoff from any of the 1 through 100-year storms is the requirement. One of the most important factors on this is that it provides for 256 acres of open space is what we're providing. So that's a 71.7% of the entire site. So that was a big factor in the design and coming up with the sizing of the lots and the open space as well. Offsite improvements, as Attorney Landry had mentioned, we worked directly with Beta Group to take a look at the current conditions. We will complete all of the conditions that were the improvements that were conditioned at the master plan, and with the consideration of the updated conditions, what's out there today. Some of those improvements have already been done, and all the recommendations in Beta's technical memorandum. So we would be taking care of those. In particular, as mentioned, we did submit for the roadway widening improvements along Sawmill Road. That's to be a minimum of 24-foot wide. There's culverts and a bridge that actually need to be expanded in that area. So that's actually pending at Department of Environmental Management Wetlands Division right now, as well as actually the whole subdivision as well is also pending at Department of DEM right now, freshwater wetlands. We got back their comments. Actually, we just got them recently. We're going through them, very minor comments, and we feel very confident that the design will hold as is, with just minor adding of details and such. So we're very happy with DEM's review as well. So that's my general overview. I'd be happy to expand on anything. I'm sure I probably missed something, and I'm sure there's probably questions that people have, but I'd be happy to answer any of the questions.
Very good, thank you. So why don't we follow our typical format? Let's go around planning board members first. And then we'll get to the planner, solicitor, and then we'll go to the public. That's okay. So planning board members, whoever would like to start.
I guess I'll go.
Here we go.
Ron. As Attorney Landry said, the issues on Guy Hill Road and Sawmill Road are already addressed or being addressed as we speak. Is that correct?
No, not all of them. So some of them, from the original submission, when the approval happened, some of them have already been done by the town. So some of them, there was a lot of cracking that was on the roads. And so they have been resurfaced. Some of them have been widened. There's been some signage that's been added. There's been yellow striping that's been done. So some of it has been done. Clearly, the widening of Sawmill Road at the culverts, that has not been done. We actually provided the Sawmill Road as a separate set as well with the packages. Sawmill Road improvements are also done as part of the package. So that has still some widening that needs to be done on the Sawmill Road end as well, yes.
Okay, there's a notation in our package about the Public Works had some comments from 2010. Where do we stand with that?
Good. That's part of the recommendation. That's what we, yeah.
So
Beta,
it's all ongoing as well? Is that correct?
that's part of, yeah, Beta addressed that in their memo as well. Yeah, with the technical memorandum as well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's all for me. Thanks.
I'll go next. I have a pile. So let me just springboard off the off-site improvement issue. So the condition, forgive me, I don't have it in front of me, the number, oh, maybe I do.
4.
Speaks to the components of the off-site improvements, but it's silent on the timing. So what is our current thinking for when the off-site improvements will be completed?
It would need to be at the same time as when the development is being done, because the point of the improvements was due to the concerns on the traffic end of things. So that's why we are concurrently, we actually submitted for the DEM approval, knowing that it's adjacent to wetlands and expanding of areas. That's why that one was actually in front of the subdivision that was submitted afterwards. So the intent is to have them done at the same time so that it will be online for when the subdivision is put in as well.
So then do I interpret that as prior to breaking ground, the improvements will be in place? During the construction, the improvements will be in place? I'm not looking for a definitive answer,
Yeah,
but
understood.
this is a topic that needs to be nailed down.
Yeah, I'm noting that
Okay.
and we'll discuss, absolutely.
We'll come back to that.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Let's talk about your ideas for restrictions. So I'm looking through your lot layout. I'm just going to pick one, page 17. And this is a detail sheet that shows the proposed roadways, the proposed location of buildings. There's some grading. There's what I believe is a limit of disturbance. So my question is, when we look at the landscaping plan, there's this wonderful green color that's everywhere. But the green color, leading us to believe that this is an undisturbed area, is really at the rear of the individual lots. So will there be restrictions carried forward in the deed that say, for example, on lot 33, the property owner is limited to the line work that depicts the limit of disturbance on sheet 17, i.e. the property owner does not get to clear the remaining portion of that property?
That was not the intent of what we were doing. That was the intent of what was to be developed. So that is what will be, what we envisioned to be where the house would be placed, where the septic would be placed, would allow for a recreational yard, and then would be sold to somebody at some point.
So that's probably
Beyond
that's probably not going to happen. So what
We
I'm,
hadn't proposed a restriction on the rear portion of the lot.
I'm suggesting that you want to consider that. Because without those kinds of restrictions, I, as the new owner of lot 33, can come in and clear cut that 0.62 acre parcel. That is going to blow your idea of existing vegetation to remain out the door. That is not what I envision here. I'm speaking as Al Diorio, personal member of the, individual member of the planning board. So I'm suggesting that you consider restrictions. Additionally, the same issue comes to mind when we talk about your grading plan. Let's see if I can pick an example. So, for example, on lot 36, I'm just picking one, there's a significant amount of grading going on that lot. I'm going to presume that when lot 36 is constructed, that grading will be implemented. What kind of restriction will you put in place so that I, as the new owner of lot 36, will not alter that grading plan simply because I don't like it? It's a suggestion that I'm offering. I believe you should implement one. Otherwise, this grading plan is out the door. Right? Tell me a little bit about your well idea. I'm used to seeing plans that have a well identified on it. You have an alternative showing an area. One of the conditions that I'm rolling around in my head is I'm thinking as a condition here, I'm going to want to see wells set. And I'm going to want to see pump tests showing that you can in fact produce water. I know that there's a note on these plans somewhere that says you promise that there'll be water. But a project of this magnitude has to go beyond a paragraph on the plan. So, I'm not looking for a definitive answer. It will have to be addressed at the next go round. And lastly, I just want to put this on the table. Given the magnitude of this project, we're going to be wanting to talk about a construction manager for the overview of this project. Again, I'm not looking for a definitive answer. It's a topic that needs to be out there. Construction manager selected by the town, paid for by the applicant, to make sure that the project is constructed in accordance with the plans. Obviously, the scope of the construction manager's position would be fleshed out as we continue our discussions, but to just leave this as an open-ended, I think I'll go out and build 140 homes, that's probably not going to fly in my book. And for the time being, those would be the only questions that I have. Questions or thoughts? Thank you. Other planning board members?
No additional questions. Thanks.
I have a question related to Al's last point, and I'll look to other planning board members on and the planner as well as to the relevance of this question at this stage, but it's about phasing. I think we might have raised this in a previous discussion about this application. You know, it is 140 houses. It's a large development. The topic of phasing just came up in the context of the septic. You mentioned that the septic has different phases, and so that's what kind of triggered this in my mind. Is it appropriate at this point to ask and think about phasing of construction in a way that makes sense? So for example, I'm just, thinking about the time it takes to develop this land in this way and all the associated structures and infrastructure. That could be a very long-term project, and economic conditions could change, and, the goals of the project and the developer might change over that time. And so rather than go through and bulldoze a P-shaped road with two legs on it, do we have the ability to talk about phasing so that this is done in increments where if 5 years from now, economic conditions have changed such that developer doesn't wish to proceed with the rest of the development, we're not stuck with a P-shaped bulldozed road with two legs sticking out of it? To be coarse and blunt, sorry. That's my question.
I think it's a great question. I see the applicant's got 7 phases identified on the plan, if I'm counting correctly. I think if I could, I think the real question is what, yeah, provided that the applicant has indeed got 7 phases going, how are we structuring the conditions of the phase? I believe this is your question. So for phase 1, for example, lots 1 through 10, lots 131 through 140. Is it the applicant's intention to fully construct phase 1 prior to initiating phase 2? Because I believe Emily's concern, it would certainly be shared by myself, that we don't want to see a project where you decided to engage lots 1, 2, and 3 in phase 1, and then you've sold phase 3 to another developer, and he wants to start lot 23. Well, that'll quickly turn into a nightmare. So I think we need clarification on how you plan to implement the various phases. Emily, what do you think? Am I on the right track?
Yeah, I totally agree. Thanks.
Anybody else? Planning board?
I guess to that matter, is there a life cycle to this? Is this a 50-year agreement? We build 20 or 30 homes, and then can they come back 10 or 20 years from now and say, okay, now we're ready to build the other 100? Technically, is there a limit to that?
Good question. Do you have I know it's a little bit crystal ball, but do you have a feel for the build out?
We don't. Again, market conditions is.
Sure.
I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did.
Understood.
I guess the question, this is keeping, and the question would be, is there any construction to be done pre-sold? Where construction will start once some homes are built.
I think it would run like any typical phase subdivision that you had. I mean, we did submit a phased bond too, as part of the preliminary plan. We have to submit preliminary numbers for what a bond might be for this as well. And we did submit that. You know, if the market was doing well, that the developer thought they wanted 40 lots, and they might record phases 1 and 2. That's no different than any other subdivision in town. You could record multiple phases at a time. They would be bonded to make sure that that's protected. You guys are protected so that the work could get taken over. It's not going to just be a dead road, you know, going in the middle of nowhere. So it would run just like any other subdivision that has a phase development through it as well. So it's not the envision, you know, to necessarily go and do the P loop. At the same point, you know, the developer also needs to look at not wanting to record too much at the same point too. That's why we develop multiple phases, right? Because as soon as it's recorded, you have 20 lots of record, you start getting taxed on 20 lots. So we're trying to find that balance as well of just what's the right amount to be able to provide the right amount that needs to be on the market at that time, but at the same point, not be restricted to spot. So that's, again, I don't have a crystal ball, but I know that for sure with the bonding that you would have, it would still be protected by it as well. So we would be doing the normal build out process the town would do with any other development. We're not asking for anything special in that regard.
Answer your question?
Yes, somewhat.
Understood. Okay, if there's nothing else from planning board members?
I do. Ooh, you have any questions? During our earlier meeting this year, we talked about the potable, non-potable water situation. All of these discussions that we're referencing in the master plan go all the way back to 2009, 2010. And I'm looking at a memo from Doug Reese dated January 15th, 2010. And in his second paragraph, he starts it with 13 years have passed since these improvements were discussed. And he goes on to mention some conditions that would be appropriate for the project. So it's another 11 years since Doug Reese spoke. And I'm asking the planning board, is it not appropriate to have our public works director go out and walk the same path that Doug Reese did to come up with these conclusions? There's been a lot of development in the area. At the earlier meeting this year, we suggested that maybe another study of the water availability and impact study, since there have been a lot of houses built in that community. There are existing houses that went into some drought conditions last year. And I'm hard pressed to find a way to support not having a thorough analysis done of that situation, other than this is what you were referring to.
Yeah, the wonder paragraph.
I promise there will be water for everybody. And you might be promising people in those 140 homes, but there are people who've been paying property taxes in that community for many more years. So I'm not in favor of not having a professional study done on that. And another comment that I'd like to make is that, as I already mentioned, we do have a lot of new houses in that community. There's been a lot of development over the last 11 years. And before we can have you commit to repairing roads that would support number 4, I think we need a traffic impact study, in addition to having the Public Works Director take a look and review the conditions. You referenced a letter from the Rhode Island Department of Health. And I'm assuming that that application has to be revisited because the letter expired 14 days after the letter was published. It said it in the letter, correct? My comments on your intentions regarding the bonding of the public roads. I guess this is a byproduct of COVID, but I think the dollar represented in there, is that just a guesstimate? Because I would say that it's very understated. And the fact that the costs don't change from phase 1 to phase 7 creates a problem for the bonding because it's not accurate. On an annual basis, we can expect to see a 3 to 5% increase on some of the materials that are applicable to that bond. And over the last year, for instance, a sheet of plywood, fire rated plywood a year ago was $22 and today it's $82. So I think we have to address that, and there has to be some appreciation for the inflation and not just the 5% for the miscellaneous. Lastly, I think affordable housing is we can all agree it's something our community needs support on. I'm going to reference a communication. I had posed a question to our solicitor, and in January, she responded to me, and I'm going to read her comments, and I'm going to suggest that this is something that you absolutely need to do. On the issue of Rhode Island Housing Letter of Eligibility, I certainly agree that the elements and assumptions underlying the letter of eligibility have certainly become outdated. However, it will not have expired per se due to tolling and extensions. However, it would not be inappropriate, in my opinion, to direct the applicant to submit an update pro forma and a confirmation from Rhode Island Housing as part of the preliminary plan submission. And finally, I will turn you to Title 45, Chapter 4553. I talked to Rhode Island, University of Rhode Island. I talked to Rhode Island Housing because I wanted to understand how the planning board could best manage that element of your project. And 4553-4, Section I, a letter of eligibility issued by the Rhode Island Housing Mortgage Finance Corporation, or in the case of projects primarily funded by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development or other state and federal agencies, an award letter indicating the subsidy or application in such form as may be prescribed for a municipal government subsidy. I'm going to skip the next paragraph. I'm going to move on to 4, a sample land lease or deed restriction with affordability liens that will restrict as low use and moderate income housing in conformance with the guidelines of the agency, providing the subsidy for the low and moderate income housing, but for a period of not less than 30 years. 5, identification of an approved entity that will monitor the long-term affordability of the low and moderate income units. I'm not going to go on, but those are the things that jumped out at me. So I think it's appropriate for the planning board to know that you're actively pursuing that. And hopefully in the very near future, you'll be able to provide the responsible documents to support those guidelines. And I am concerned about the abutting properties. I know I talked about the potable water, the non-potable water. I'm concerned about the drainage to abutting properties. We've got a situation where one of the property owners is less, 300 feet, might be slightly over 300 feet from the property line. And it's clear with some of the projects that we've taken under our wing here that overflow and drainage and flooding is it's a probability. And while I know the footprint of the entire space is 368 acres, when you squeeze 140 families into a community, you are supplying them with water, hopefully, for their pleasure. There is going to be a potential for overflow. And I think it's something that shouldn't become a civil matter for a neighbor. So basically what I'd like to know is that when you have your water impact study done, that and include the abutters in the community, maybe you could find out what their flow rates are now, and those expectations should be heeded to going forward. And if they're not, perhaps there should be some form of agreement, accountability, support to that person that might be experiencing those issues. And that's all I have for you.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Yeah, so let me just comment on one of your thoughts about the additional water study. I certainly don't object, but my gut reaction is we're kind of at the point where we're beyond studies. I want to see the water. So my position would be, it's great to do a study, but if we rely only on the study and the study is inaccurate, we're right where we are today with the paragraph, the wonder paragraph. Whereas if we formulate a condition to actually place the wells and have them produce the water, we don't really need to rely on that paragraph quite so much. Just a thought. Well, great comments.
Well, John, I know you have a question. I just want to go one more time on the affordable housing. Are these the last 35 of the 140 units to be built?
No, they have to be.
I'm sorry, one at a time.
Oh, sorry, Keith. My question is the 35 affordable housing units, are those the last of the 140 units to be built, or when do they get phased in?
They have to be per phase. So if the phase, say there was only one phase that was recorded at first, phase number 1, that was 20 units, 5 of them would need to be. It needs to be at 20 because it's a comprehensive permit. You need to be at 25% at each time. So you'd have to have 5 of those 20 and before you're able. So They need to be, that is a requirement. They need to be incorporated throughout the development, and they need to be incorporated at the same time as the development. You can't obviously wait till the end.
Thank you.
Good question.
This is John. Thank you, Keith. That was my first question, affordable housing per phase. My next one is relevant to condition number 3. You mentioned that there are going to be 140 individual septic tanks in this plan. I don't know that, again, I wasn't there in 2010, but I'm not sure that meets the spirit of the decision that there be a community septic tank as opposed to 140 private septic tanks. Just something that stood out to me. I have to do a little bit. I haven't gotten through the entire packet yet, so there might be something I've missed. The other part, this is a multi-part question. So condition 4 references several documents that are not, that I haven't found in the packet. The PUD plan, a separate study, and RAB. Are those documents available? And the reason I ask is because when I read that the conditions of Dye Hill Road must be taken care of between the development and 138, I'm thinking the other direction. Is this for construction purposes? Is this to satisfy the increased residential traffic? Because I would imagine all of those people would go to 138 the other way, just as they would cut through Sawmill Road. Again, without those additional documents that are referenced, that include the specific conditions, I don't know how to read it. Yeah, and so I don't know if the concern is for construction or for residential traffic. I wonder if we should have a town engineer sort of validate all the findings, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page, because I'm not qualified to judge a roadway. I also wonder from 2010, when the decision was to improve the roads, Beta came up with a couple of different conditions, like a different phases, where this is, 1 to 5 years, 6 to 10. I don't have them in front of me. Was the spirit of that decision to get them into the condition where we are 20 years away from serious maintenance, or we are just a few years away from the next maintenance phase? I would think that the spirit would be to get the roads into excellent condition so that all of the customers of this development would benefit from wonderful roads, and all the existing residents would as well, but not sure. That's my list.
Very good. John, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, and just one of those, if I may.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify on the community septic as well, and we can provide some more if necessary, but typically with the community septic, it's the leach field. The leach field is the only thing that's physically putting the effluent into the ground and providing that. So you would have to have a septic tank at each house. Otherwise, you would have the waste just going all the way down to the end. There's nothing that is infiltrated on that site. It's a typical, it comes from your building sewer, goes to the septic tank, gets treated for the denitrification there, and then it goes off the force main. But nothing's going into the ground there at all. It's only going into the ground and infiltrating like a normal septic leach field would be in the leach field community area. So my understanding from all of the discussions that we had is it was a concern of creating greater separation of where the effluent of the septic is being brought back into the ground and separations from wells and such like that. So I would be hard pressed to understand. You would need to have a septic tank at each house. The tank needs to be at the house anyway to at least get the solids out and such before it goes out to the leach field as well. So just want to provide a little clarification for that as well.
Yep, thank you. Yes, go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Deb O'Leary from the Conservation Commission. I have two concerns. We were talking about septic. I'm going to talk about power. How are we going to power the pumps for the wells? These pumps we're going to have for the septic tanks to pump the effluent out and into the leach fields. Is there going to be a generator available? Because we live in the land of the power's out. So that was my first question. And my second question is, we talk about stormwater runoff, but that particular, and nothing we've seen, shows the slope of this property. This property slopes right up to Acadia. And I read the stormwater folder, and I'm not an engineer, but it sounds like an awful lot of things that need to be done just to ensure that poor Mr. Orlandi is not going to have a swimming pool in his basement. The other thing that I'm concerned about that was mentioned earlier is that there's 300 feet between the properties and Arcadia. When there's hunting in Arcadia, it can't be within 500 feet of a residence. So that might cause a problem for some if the deer is standing on the line. I don't have anything else to add. Carolyn covered the wells very well. I had a lot of comments about those as well. This is big, and this is a big project, guys. This is the largest residential project ever seen in this town. And I really don't know if it belongs here. Thank you.
Good, thank you. So we go around the horn as we usually do. Anything, comments from the town planner? Oops.
Yeah, sure.
Yep, hold public,
In the public.
public's on hold.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Jim Lampier, Town Planner. I noticed that the applicant submitted a technical memorandum from Beta Associates. And Beta happens to be one of our two on-call engineering firms. So they would be, I would say they would be prohibited from peer review of this. So I don't see why Crossman could not do a peer review of this project. I would recommend that the board require a peer review of this to look at Beta's report and also to see how they intended to reconcile the memo from Douglas Reese of 2010, which is a requirement in the master plan approval. I haven't read the Beta report yet. It came in late, actually. I think Eric will agree that that was one item that came in later than the other. There. And but I did find it. What I put in the plan board packet, I was supposed to put it, but in the event that it's not, we'll look into that. But I definitely think this should be peer reviewed by Crossman, and they should work with our director of public works to go out there and assess the roads and see what needs to be done. In addition to that, I just want to mention that in your packet, you should have a letter from Mr. John and Martha Orlandi on this project. You should have another piece of communication dated November 19, 2020 from Carol DeRozier. And the other day, I just received a letter, August 2nd, 2021, from Sherry Baronian, which I have 11 copies. Can I pass that out to the board? I see Sherry is in the audience. She may want to read that tonight. I don't know. But in the event that she does, you can follow along with it. And that is.
You want for the applicant too, Jim?
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair, right now.
Thank you, Jim. Jim, let me just follow up on your comment about the peer review. Just refresh me on the mechanics. Do projects just get transmitted to the consultant? Do we have to make a motion? What happens?
I would say the planning board should make a motion to have the project peer reviewed by Crossman Engineering.
Okay, thank you.
And then we'll see that everything gets done.
Mr. Chair, can I address that issue of the peer review?
Sure.
If I may?
Yeah, yeah.
Crossman, as I understand it, were the engineers for the original project on the site. They'd be kind of peer reviewing some of their own elements there that we're preserving. And Crossman has also been involved in the past in some projects that my client was involved in. So we thought they would be conflicted. And the town only has 2 engineers. So what we were trying to do was to have, knowing that Beta is a consulting engineer of the town, we asked Beta to peer review us. Just took the affirmative step of doing that. And maybe the town Public Works Department wants to review their conclusions. Maybe Beta would come in here on our nickel to explain where they are. But that was a deliberate choice to try to accelerate the peer review process so that we weren't relying entirely on discrete engineering. We knew Crossman was probably not going to be able to get involved in this project, and Beta is a very capable firm and prepared a good technical report that was completely their own work with certain recommendations. Now, I think the planning board and the Department of Public Works director are perfectly capable of looking at the conditions of the roads, and examining those conditions. We had, the other point is that GZA was the consulting engineer during the first round. And we went on for like a year over, can you have this kind of septic system? Can you have that kind of septic system? Is the water going to work? How much is this going to cost the town for school kids? And what the planning board did was to reduce the density by more than half, saying we think these issues would be mitigated, and our concerns, and they use that word, mitigated or completely eliminated, through a very substantial reduction in the density of the project. And that's where they came out with and determined they could make the appropriate findings based on a reduced size project in the neighborhood of where we're at, all the health and safety requirements that were required for a favorable decision, which they issued based on that condition being satisfied. So, we spent a year doing that. The chair will remember, the whole septic system and how big does a lot have to be to support a well and a set. And that's a long path to try to retrace. I do realize there's a lot of time that's passed, and we all need to take a snapshot of what's changed since then. That seems to be perfectly adequate. But to get in another engineering company now to start, reevaluating this whole thing, we're at preliminary with working on a master plan that was approved and found to be workable and approvable as having no adverse health impacts, no adverse environmental impacts, subject to the conditions that were noted. And so I would, we're always looking to have people look at things, but to go back to yet another engineering firms and open all this up, that's what we did last time on most of these issues.
Yeah, but Mr. Landry, perhaps I'm misconstruing the comment. Isn't the only topic the offsite improvements? Nobody's thinking about going back to septic or lot
Okay.
size or,
That's.
I don't think that was the intention. Please clarify if I've misconstrued.
I would agree with that, Mr. Chairman. There's no need to re-engineer the whole project. GZA did an excellent job. Their task at the master plan level was to determine an appropriate density for this parcel. And that's the work that they did. That's the density that the planning board came up with.
Done.
But I think we have to agree here that there has been engineering done on this project since 2010, which is exemplified right here on this sheet of paper, which has never been reviewed by anybody. And so, primarily, yes, I would agree. It is the offsite improvements. And I'd like to know, I haven't read the data report yet, in all honesty, but I'd like to know how they reconcile. When I read condition number 4, and it says the applicant shall perform the improvements indicated in the Public Works Director's memo of January 15, 2010, And then I printed this out and I read this again today. And the director of public works at that time was calling for 34-foot width of pavement on both Dye Hill and Sawmill. So I haven't heard the applicant say that they did that. I don't know that the town of Hopkinton has done that. So, I mean, I'd like to know exactly how the applicant intends to comply with condition number 4.
Well, I may be speaking out of turn here and wandering out of my lane, but I read the condition. I read that report, and you don't get to change the conditions. The planning board has been adamant in holding the applicant to the conditions that were issued at the time. I can't see where the director of public works, who I'm sure knows his job way better than I do, can now come in and say, we think it should be something else. That doesn't fly with me. The applicant agreed to a set of conditions. That's what the applicant gets to do. My opinion.
There was feasibility language in those conditions as well, of where feasible. You got public telepoles and all kinds of things that would limit what could be done there. And there was feasibility language in the planning board decision.
We've asked you to abide by the conditions that were issued. You've been courteous enough to do that. I think we kind of owe it to you to do the same thing.
But we're focusing on the language in the planning board decision.
Yeah, I get it. So listen, on to the issue of peer review. And that was a very forward move on your part to get Beta into the game. It's not exactly the way we would normally do business. Of course, you already knew that. In my experience, if the town hires a solicitor on a project and the solicitor is conflicted, usually there's a referral to another solicitor to carry the ball through that proceeding. Does the town or does Beta or Crossman have other folks that they would turn to and say, listen, I can't handle this one. Can you do this one for me? Are we in that position? Should the planning board decide that it wants to push for peer review?
Well, I thought that was, in my opinion, I think that's jumping the gun a little bit. I think, for the developer to go forth without even contacting the planner and hiring someone that they knew was one of the town's consultants on their own, having their own conversation with them without any kind of approval from the town of Hopkinton. I don't know who paid these people for this work. This was done in March. Normally, the town pays consultants, the town is reimbursed. Now we have someone just doing an end run around everybody, hiring our own consultant right off the bat. They take that. First of all, I would say Beta should have told them, not for nothing, but we are the town's on-call consultant. Beta should have called me and said, Jim, can we take this job, or what do you think? I don't know. This was kind of a surprise to me. I've never seen this done before.
I just said it was a forward move. I'm sure everyone was cognizant of how this was going to fall out. My question is, where do we go from here? Does the town have a?
Well, my question to Mr. Landry would be, the first thing he said was that Crossman was the original engineer on the original project. What specific original project are you referring to on this site?
I think it was the brushing, the plant unit development that approved the 90s.
Okay, so what would that have to do? Why would that exclude Crossman from peer reviewing this particular project?
They had worked on the same project, were following a lot of the same, the original road system was all in there. They engineered the septics for that project. It just seems like it's kind of close to home.
Yeah, but at that point in time, Crossman was working for another developer of that site.
Correct.
Right now, Crossman's working for the town now for another owner of this property on another project. Matter of fact, I would think Crossman would be in an excellent position to do this because if, as you say is correct, they know the site. They have some history with the site. So I wouldn't, myself personally, I wouldn't accept that. As far as them working for your client, LR6A owner, is that, you're saying that Crossman has worked for that client?
They've done work concerning the center of New England, which my client is a primary owner. They've been involved in that project for a number of years. They may feel they don't want to peer review his projects, but that's something you'll have to ask them.
Well, I mean, again, I would say that if we can't use Beta, if we can't use Crossman, I would say we have to go out and get, do we bring GZA back?
Why don't you just query Crossman? Listen, this is like a ethics thing, right? They have to make the call. If the answer is yes, we don't have any further discussion. If the answer is no, then we're in a quandary. But just query them and see where we go. I see a lot of wiggle room for both sides, so I don't think it's gonna be clear cut.
That's good. I think in any event, I think we need some engineering expert, whoever that might be, to come in here and take a look at this.
So we could make a motion for peer review, and then we gotta crank out some details.
Yep.
Okay, we can do that. At the appropriate time. Okay, Maggie, anything from your end?
One item, Mr. Chairman. I didn't catch whether or not in any of the units, whether there was going to be any age restrictions. So in reviewing the prior record, I note that Mr. Ritchie, who's been the superintendent of schools, had expressed concerns at the time, and I understand Mr. Landry says that those issues were mitigated by the reduction in units. Where this could become important is in the phasing and whether or not all of those homes who might be expected to have school-age children, what's the impact going to be to the school system? So I would suggest that the town reach out again to the school system to get some input. I know that the demographics for Charahoe generally have changed substantially in the past 10 years, 11 years. Certainly in my town, Charlestown, our share has plummeted. I don't know what Hopkinton's share is like. So we might want to get some information from the school department on the overall impact, and then with a recommendation as to phase, if that's appropriate.
Okay, very good, thank you. And so do you think that the town is the one to initiate that action? Is that your recommendation?
I would say yes, we reach out to the town, I mean, to the school department.
Yep, okay, good point, thank you.
The chair, I just want to contribute something on that issue, though. We have not affirmatively proposed age-restricted units. That's never been part of the project. On these, the affordable housing issue and the town's greatest needs for affordable housing was always family. Remember, at the time we went through with this project, there wasn't one family unit available to persons of low or moderate income housing. And I don't think the intent of the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act was to have great quantities of senior housing that may not be required when the need is something greater. I'll also point out that this project is identified in the current comprehensive plan as part of the town's affordable housing strategy. The comprehensive plan actually describes this as an approved project. It's obviously not fully approved, but it embraces this project at its approved densities, which the town established, and the number of affordable units as critical as an accomplishment of the town itself. So I think we're swimming in the same direction as the comp plan in terms of the way we conceive the affordable units for the project. There will be a monitoring agent that was part of our application. I think we suggested Narragansett Affordable Housing. They do these throughout the state. They certify the qualifications of the applicants, make sure that the appropriate number of affordable units are there. We have deed restrictions that we submitted as part of the application, deed restricting the units to households that qualify. We've got the monitoring agent. Rhode Island Housing, I've asked them a lot of times over the last 40 years to update letters of eligibility. They've done it 0 times. They say, when we issue a letter of eligibility, we issue a letter of eligibility. We don't guarantee subsidies. Since that time, municipal density bonuses have become a form of subsidy. So you don't need a Rhode Island Housing subsidy. We can update the pro forma, though. That's a perfectly reasonable request since construction costs are different and housing prices are different. And we can continue to satisfy you that the project, the reason for the pro forma, I think it was mostly conceived for nonprofits who depend on subsidies from the government. And Rhode Island Housing wanted to make sure that the project penciled out, from an income perspective and cost perspective to make sense, that they'll actually finish the project. So we don't have any problem with that. We're a private developer. I don't think Rhode Island Housing is particularly interested in private developers that they're not giving any money to, but updating the pro forma is not an issue. And getting you the contract with the proposed contract with the monitoring agent in place.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify, I didn't want to give the board the impression that I was suggesting that you should have an age restricted development. That was not my intent. My intent was to factor in, assuming for the moment that these 140 homes will fit the need for families, each and every one of them. It is going to become important as to how quickly they come online.
Sure.
Any questions?
Got it. Yes, thank you. Okay, so we've heard from the planning board, we've heard from the planner, the solicitor, time to go out to the public. So for those that wishing to be heard on this application, I saw that hand first earlier this evening. Step forward to the microphone, keep it as close as you possibly can, name for the record and.
Bill Bergen, Dye Hill Road. I have a couple of questions and I have a couple of observations. Did I hear, Jim, you say that recommendation for the road of Dye Hill and Sawmill was 34 feet?
Yes, 34-foot pavement. Yes.
Okay, currently, where my house is on Dye Hill Road, and where John O'Landy's house is on Dye Hill Road, and where Sherry Haronian's house is on Dye Hill Road, about 2 months ago, I went out and measured the road, including the small adjustments that the town highway department made when they paved the road 6-7 years ago, whatever it is now. The average width of that road is about 20 feet, maybe. Some places it's 19. If you move east of Sherry Haronian's house on the little 2 curves with the giant trees that are going to kill somebody at some day, that road is about 18 or 19 feet wide. So if you open that road to 34 feet there, you go into the field, all right? But if you back up to the west, where my house and John O'Landy's house is, when you measure from my mailbox to 2 feet away from John O'Landy's stone wall, that is 22 feet. If you move it 5 feet from my mailbox, you take out 5 feet of my front yard and all the barrier trees that I have for arborvitae to protect me from the road. And you take out all of John O'Landy's stone wall. How does that work? Who, how, where, why? What's the operative for that?
I don't have any answer. Great question. I also want to add that in reviewing that memo, it talks about 34 feet of pavement. It also talks about a 60-foot wide right of way. So is the town going to get engaged in taking? This is a question that I don't need an answer to right now, but we have a memo from somebody making these suggestions. That's a wonderful thing. The mechanics of implementing those, I think, speaks to your question. Just how is that going to happen?
If that is the case, right, and they take from the middle of the current road and open it up 30 feet, you're about probably 10 feet into my front yard, which makes my house about 24 or 25 feet away from the road and goes into John O'Landy's front yard. I'm just using these two because these are where we live.
Sure.
All right, you go into John O'Landy's yard on the north side of his stone wall, probably 8 or 9 feet, 10 feet, something like that. Are we taking the road and the people are getting paid to do a subdivision? Or does this have to be amended to kind of play with the road some other way? I mean, I don't want my property taken. I know John doesn't want his taken. For what, the better good of a developer? That's my question. That's my first question. All right, I'm gonna be here a while.
Can I read something off of Mr. Reese's memo? And maybe we can get some elaboration from you guys. And this is for you. It says the infrastructure on Sawmill Road bridges and culverts. Or is it Sawmill Road, comma, bridges and culverts? All should meet these requirements of 34 feet pavement width. So I'm seeing that maybe there's some flexibility in some of that. But
Yeah, Jim Land did out there. I will, as Mr. Landry correctly pointed out there, if you read the entirety of condition number 4, there's a disclaimer here. It says unless they are proven to be infeasible. And I say they, those are the improvements suggested by Doug Reese. So that's why I said earlier, I'd like to see how the applicant reconciles this condition number 4 with going forth with this preliminary plan. There may have to be some sort of adjustment on the part of the planning board on their conditions before they approve the preliminary plan. But I would suggest getting another engineer in here, specializing in traffic, because quite frankly, I've never seen a developer yet in my 20 years who brings in their own traffic expert saying that there's no impact here. So I mean, I think the town needs its expert to take a look at this, critique what was done by Data, and see exactly, talk to our director of public works today, after all the work that's been done out there, and tell the planning board exactly what the town needs to do to bring those roads up to a proper standard. And then I would suggest that's what needs to be done today, so that we don't have this development and we have inferior infrastructure out there. Now is the time to have a developer build whatever that development, causes to be necessary.
I'm on board with having a consultant come in on behalf of the town. And I guess once we decide that we are effectively going to do that, it would be appropriate to have his concern about the encroachment on his land to meet that 34-foot requirement evaluated, because this is likely could be determined infeasible and you wouldn't have to worry about it.
All right, so back to Mr. Diorio earlier, he said, at what phase are we doing what? I don't understand why all of the road infrastructure and all of the studies and the actual development of the roads is not mandatorily done prior to any building starting before the first bulldozer goes up that road to build a new road. All of the infrastructure need to be done. When they build a new stadium in Foxborough, they don't build a stadium and then build the roads. They build the roads and then they build a stadium. We should have the same consideration here, that all the roads, Sawmill, the bridges are all done, the culverts are all clean. What happens to the bridge on Brushy Brook? I haven't heard that mentioned at all. There's a bridge on Brushy Brook that is with a culvert that's probably inferior right now also. So now you have Woody Hill Road with the bridge out and gone, right? The traffic study that was done in 2009 or 2010 is now obsolete and really shouldn't even be looked at. The reason being is any traffic that comes out of that development, if it were built today, has two decisions to make a right and go out to 138, make a left, go out to Sawmill, or go back out to Route 3 or Fairview, one of those that way. But they lose the option to go out, make a right and a left and go out Woody Hill to get on 138. So you've changed the whole dynamics of the traffic pattern by that bridge not being in there anymore. All of that other stuff is not appropriate and not relevant anymore. You've changed the whole dynamic.
My thought on some of this is that this would be a multi-year project and there would be tremendous capital equipment going up and down those roads. And perhaps there might be points in the roads or points in the bridges that couldn't support that traffic unless they were improved. So I would think that would just be an automatic call, because they need to support the roadways for their own interests. So hopefully,
I agree, but it should be put, as the planning board should say, you can't go to there until everything else is done. And then you can start that. Why are we going to let them drive up the road and start clearing land when they've got to bring a bulldozer up one way and a cement truck up the other, and there's no place to pass by Sherry Aronian's house? It should be all done. None of it should go forward. That's my first thing. I'm just gonna be here a while. So my next question is for the engineer from the engineering department. Can you give me an approximate length from Dye Hill Road to the back of that property on the north end where the road turns up where the septic system is on the right-hand side there, the north, what would be the northwest corner? Approximate length from there to Dye Hill Road?
Why don't you go over there and point, Mr. Brooke?
I'll have to go to the microphone anyway to answer, so. Okay, give me one minute, I can look at the plans, because that road is stationed, so it has the station numbers on it. I'll just take a look at what the end is. So to the bend around lot number kind of 106.
The whole length, tile.
No, but I'm just trying to clarify before it turns to the right. So like 106, for instance.
Right here, the whole length of that road, from the septic, the green septic top, which would be.
Sure, thank you.
From this point of the road right here.
Yep.
To that point of the road right
Okay,
there.
so that's
Even though there are turns in it, the total approximate total length,
about 5,100.
okay, 1 mile. You call it a mile?
Sure.
Is a mile good? All right.
That's more than a mile.
All right. It's 180 feet less. But anyhow, at the end of that road, across on the Dye Hill side is my garage, directly opposite that road. Okay, John O'Landy's little road goes in where you can see on the map, just on the west side of where the road comes out. But the turn is in the road that goes to the east, to the west, and all the water just north of that is going to come down into the back of that property and in the back of John O'Landy's land and across down the road, across Dye Hill Road, down the road, through my garage and into Brushy Brook. And in 1 mile of everything I've ever seen of rain runoff, and last year in Middletown, there was a rain of about 3 inches in about an hour and a half. I watched on the Aquidneck Island Road, the road wash out because it couldn't carry the water on probably a 1/4 mile road. In a 1 mile road, that entire property goes from Dye Hill Road to the back of the point that I pointed on the north end, goes downhill from A to B. There is no deviation any place on that road. I walk that woods all the time. That is not from north to south, from up to down. North side is up, south side is down. I am willing to bet there is no way on a 3-inch rainstorm, no matter how many culverts and storm drains they put, that Mr. O'Landy's and my property are not going to get inundated with water. I can't see any way they could engineer it. I've been working in construction for a long time. I've worked on a lot of roads. It would be damn near impossible to do. That's my first concern. My second concern is the southwest corner where the leach field is, which would be on the left side of the map towards the top, right? The proximity of that to Brushy Brook. Where does that wind up in contamination over 20 years? What does it do to Brushy Brook? From my best guesstimate, looking at the map right now, that's probably 400 feet away. I would guess, just by looking at it and judging it on the relevance of the whole length of the property of 5,100 feet. What does that do? That one should not be there. It's not, I mean, Brushy Brook is right there. What's it going to do to it with saturation over 20 years? And then my last question, well, actually, it's a comment, the water comment. To the bottom of that map where that little point is on the bottom, right? Somewhere along there is Dye Hill Road runs to the left line all the way down to the bottom left corner, approximately. It's got curves and everything in it. But the people that own the property, that would be to the right of Dye Hill Road, right? Most of you are familiar with the Doc Cummings property, the big farm. He had a big field out in the back. His well is probably 50 feet from Dye Hill Road. So I'm going to just give you an idea about where the house would be and where the well would be. I'm guessing that his house is right in here somewhere, and Dye Hill Road is right here somewhere, because Dye Hill Road turns and goes like this, after Fairview and before Fairview, right in here, all right? Doc Cummings' well is in the front of the house, when the house is probably 700 or 800 feet off the road. The reason being is when they drilled wells up in the back field behind his house, they never got any water, all right? To the south of that, going this way, there's a person I know that built a house which would be in this pretty much just, it would be south of where we're looking at in that bottom corner, right? He's drilled 2 wells in his house on a newer house, right? One of them's at 1,000 feet, the other one was at 600 feet, and they got no water. Those 2 houses are on a line. If you look down Dye Hill Road and you went from Skunk Hill to Dye Hill, as you come down the hill and go along, everything is to the right and up that slope, similar to what that slope is there. My opinion is they're gonna have a really hard time getting water, and they should have to drill for water. And what is the disadvantage to all the neighbors when they drill those wells that are on Dye Hill Road? There's a water shortage somewhere in there where you don't get water when you drill a well. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Interesting. Other comments? I saw that hand next, right in the back. Third.
John Landy, 122 Dye Hill Road. I got a couple of concerns. My major one is my well. I got a 28-foot drain point well. I got 14 gallons a minute. What is all the septic systems going to do to my well? Stuff runs downhill. I'm downhill. The other concern is the water. I sent you pictures of the water in 2010. We did 5 weeks of pumping out water out of our basement. How are they going to control that? Okay, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Sharon, you had something to add.
Sharon Davis, Cedarwood Lane. On your sheet 11, the big one, I wanted to know which houses are going to be, which lots are going to be affordable, and how will you identify them to make sure that you sell 5 out of 20 in phase 1, et cetera. And your lot number 7 doesn't have a house on it. Number 2. I think they talked about the potable water.
Sharon, if I may, just make sure you keep that microphone.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
It's hard. The wetlands, the road bottom wetlands permit. I don't think you have one for Dye Hill Road. talked about what you did for Sawmill and you talked about what you did for the whole project, but I don't think you did anything for Dye Hill Road. And that one has to be why you do need to do the same thing on that one. I wanted to know who are the builders? Who's responsible, who's going to be responsible for the septic system when you have this homeowners association? What, you know, what are the responsibilities? Who's going to be responsible for that? And you kept talking about 140 houses. How many of them are going to be affordable? Is it 28 or is it 35? Because if you're going to go with 25%, it should be 112 regular and 28 affordable housing. I talked about the widening of Dye Hill Road. On the letter from Rhode Island Department of Health, it said you needed to have the coordinates of the wells within 14 days, and that was dated April 9th, 2020. So I think you need to have a new letter. Also, number 8, it says at the conclusion of the well, no, number 9, it says groundwater under the direct influence of surface water, that's GUDI, monitoring and reporting plan must be developed to demonstrate the wells are not under the influence of surface water. And I wanted to know what that plan was. And I think you answered the question about there won't be individual wells, it'll just be common wells, right? Then in the beta plan, the beta memorandum, technical memorandum, I think that well, I was going to say, I thought their recommendations, you know, short-term, mid-term, and long-term should be followed and should be incorporated in what we request of them. And the same thing for Dye Hill Road, both Sawmill Road and Dye Hill Road. And who's going to do the for pavement maintenance plan? Who's going to be implementing targeted preservation treatments periodically as needed? Who's going to do that? Is that going to now be ultimately the responsibility of the homeowner association or the town? That's part of the recommendation. So we need to get that straight. And I didn't understand your key maps in your drawings because it just shows, I don't know why you highlight, like, for example, on sheet 13, you highlight 13. But I don't know what relevance that has to the lots that are on that page. So I don't understand your key map. That's it.
Good comments, thank you. Is there any?
Carol DeRogers, I want to thank members of the planning board and Jim for a lot of their comments so far tonight, reinforcing some of my concerns. Particularly one was the road study. I really do believe that the town needs to hire their own road study group. And I thank Mr. Bergen for his comments about Brushy Brook Bridge. As soon as you exit the new development and take a right, there is a bridge there that is only 18 feet wide from guardrail to guardrail. And also the comments that Mr. Bergen made about Woody Bridge, where that bridge is now permanently removed, that does change the entire dynamic. So I was glad to hear others bring that up. I think I have to say I'm glad that Beta won't be doing our traffic study based on what they did produce. Communal wells, I do live within a mile of the new development and my well did go dry last year. So we need some sort of protection against future impacts. And I guess I am due south of the farm that Mr. Bergen mentioned, where they had to drill their well way in the front, and I follow that same line where the water supply isn't great. So I'm hoping we can do something to protect the residents in the area. Communal septic, I do have a lot of questions about that. It doesn't seem like the plans for that are far enough along yet. It's the whole denitrification process that concerns me, whether that burden seems to now fall on each individual homeowner versus being in some sort of communal. I'm sure there are different types of communal septic setups, some where the denitrification occurs at each individual tank, but there must be a better process for that, because when I researched denitrification septic systems, there is a cost associated for each homeowner on that. They have to be inspected twice a year and have to be cleaned once a year. One vendor I checked with, they said it's like $300 a year for those things. There's added electrical costs because they have different mechanical systems in them for the denitrification. And if they ever had to be replaced, the cost is double what a regular system would be. So denitrification at the homeowner level concerns me. I don't know who would monitor that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing to make sure that the nitrogen flow doesn't increase and get into our groundwater and well systems. I want to mention that I love the idea of a construction manager. In the past, I have thought of clerk of the works for some of our large scale solar development. And I think that is really important here to make sure that somebody can stay on top of every nuance of this project and then just report back to the planning department, the goods and the bads of what's going on. Homeowners Association. So I live in what's called, I guess, Pleasant View Estates. And in our deed, we have restrictions and protective covenants, yet no HOA was ever formed and those covenants are not enforced. There's examples in the neighborhood of things that are not meeting the covenants. So how can we be sure that the Brushy Brook HOA will be in existence, that it will cover the maintenance of the wells, the retention basins, the communal septic, if true communal septic occurs, or some way to support maybe each of the individual homeowners to do their communal, their septic denitrification. And also, if you're going to add deed restrictions around grading and clearing, I don't understand how those get enforced, and I think that's something that really needs to be thought about.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else in the eye? See a hand right there.
Sherry Aronian, Dye Hill Road. Sure. AHARONIAN. I have quite a bit here too. I'm going to start with a question, if I could ask through the chair to the developer, starting with affordable housing. I had asked this question in 2019 when the developer was before us, what the current market rate is for affordable housing for 2021. I know in 2019, I think it was around 260,000. I'm not sure what it is now in 2021. I'd just be curious to know what approximately the market value is on an affordable unit. Okay, we'll come back to it then. Okay, no problem. I'll keep going. Okay. I'd like to also, my first comments would be, I want to comment on, Mr. Bergen. I wholeheartedly agree with what he said throughout his talk, and especially calling attention to the road improvements needing to be done prior to them really even driving into their development. Because the construction equipment that's going to be needed to drive into their development is going to be quite hefty on our little road. So I do agree with Mr. Bergen there. Additionally, when he spoke about, the way this land pitches downhill towards us neighbors at the bottom on Dye Hill Road, both him and Mr. Orlandi spoke to completely things I can validate as well, going back to the floods of 2010 when Brushy Brook itself, I'll use the word exploded during that time. And I can attest to the fact that Mr. Orlandi's yard and his basement were flooded for days. And what that water did was it came through Mr. Orlandi's yard and then it just went right under the stone wall and flooded our yard too for probably a week. Because that's just how the water runs, is it seeks its lowest level. So that I wanted to, again, be another voice that commented on that did happen. And that whole project does have a tremendous slope towards us abutters on Dye Hill Road, and it's concerning. Let's see, I'm gonna refer to my, I guess we'll call it a letter. And I apologize, it didn't get in your packets, but just the timing of it. By the time I review the documents, your packets had already gone out. So thank you to Jim for making these printouts for you guys tonight. I'm going to just start with number 1. Page 8 of 23 on the preliminary plan here shows an infiltration pond G, which according to the way I measured it with a ruler, it's about 400 feet from our house. That's a large detention pond, catching runoff for a huge subdivision, again, running downhill, and it greatly concerns us as far as groundwater, water contamination, runoff, and erosion. And I'm wondering if the board would, entertain requesting the applicant move this infiltration pond further back or relocate it to an area not so close to abutters. Something to food for thought there. Number 2, this is kind of related to, I guess you would call it a performance bond, although I don't think performance bond is the right terminology for what I'm looking for. We've talked tonight about assurances that we will have water as abutters, that our wells won't be negative affected as far as quality or quantity. I feel that it's not really a performance bond I would be looking for, but perhaps an escrow account to be put in place to assure that there's funding there should something go wrong. And by going wrong, I mean any negative repercussions occurring to abutting property owners as a result of building this project, such as, but not limited to, wells, septic, foundation, any other structures on the land, that sort of thing, just because of the size and the scope and the location of how close it is to abutters. I know when the town approved this project, they wanted it away from Arcadia, and I'm probably not. And that's I can see there was reasons for doing that. However, clustering it so close to the abutters also creates some issues as well. I know there was some talk as well about additional testing of residents' wells amongst the planning board members, and I want to say I wholeheartedly support that. And again, to assure water flow and quality aren't affected. I also could not really locate the wells on the plan. I saw a pump house. I don't know if that is a well. I don't know. But that again is 300 feet from our house. And if that pump house is a well and is drawing 300 feet away from us, we have concerns about our well. Let's see. Since we don't know who the contractor or the builder is going to be for this project, and it's possible these lots could be sold off to multiple builders, I agree with the board when they discussed a construction management company hired by the town, paid for by the applicant to oversee and ensure project stipulations are adhered to due to the size and scope of this particular project. And as Deb O'Leary mentioned, this is the largest project in town, could even be in South County. There was a lengthy document submitted by the developer on stormwater facilities, and I believe it was right on the first page. It raised concerns about potential unmaintained facilities, was the wording, as a result of the potential lack of a clear ownership and responsibility definition. And I think what they meant by that was who's going to own these detention ponds. And I know the The thought is an HOA. However, and I know they submitted a deed for an HOA, but you can't force anybody to create an HOA, or if you do say you can force it, who's going to enforce it if they don't do it? And if they don't contribute funds to it, to maintain the roads, to maintain the infiltration ponds and the septic, what happens then if that neighborhood is without any funds? Is it the town that enforces that and puts a lien? I have no idea, but it just seems like homeowners associations are great ideas, but they don't always pan out. And because this particular project, as Carol said, her neighborhood and in particular, they were required to have an HOA, they don't, but this project has so many caveats that needs an HOA. Carol's neighborhood does not. So they don't have one. I guess you can live that way, but this one has so many caveats that they really need it. And in the event they don't have it, what's the contingency plan? And lastly, we respectfully request that all conditions and concerns that are written in the master plan are followed by the developer and adhered to, by the construction management company overseeing it. I'd also like to thank the planning board and Jim for your comments tonight. I support everything that you guys discussed prior to me standing up here. And the last thing I have is just to, as the planning board moves through this process, the land and subdivision regulations do state for subdivisions like this that there is minimal clearing. That is actually in there, so that the house lots are not just bulldozed into flatness. They're supposed to be minimal clearing, and that is in the subdivision regs. And that will do it for me. Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
So Carol DeRogers, I did have in my notes that subdivision regulations 8.6.4 does say something along the line that all public improvements and infrastructure has to be completed within 2 years from the initial date of preliminary plan approval and prior to the approval and recording of the final plan of a major land development project or major subdivision, unless otherwise authorized by the planning board.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else in the public wishing to be heard on this application this evening? I see no hands. Okay. So, Mr. Landry, lots of stuff on the table. Let's take care of business first. We are under a timeline. September 8th, if I'm not mistaken.
So we can extend it beyond that date and jump rock to rock.
Why don't you offer an extension window that you think is reasonable?
Why don't I suggest a 60-day, we'll go after the October meeting, and
That's fine.
The client, we're hoping to start at least the first phase of this, and so that people have some greater comfort level. There has to be an HOA now. I don't know how an HOA was never created. Subdivision regulations require it. We can't record a final plan these days without all legal documents being signed, associations being set up, there being a provision that if the association doesn't do what it's supposed to do, then the town has to do it. They get reimbursed from the homeowners. It's no different than any other significant subdivision anywhere else. And we've already submitted those documents for review. So I don't think that's a particular concern. But what I see happening is that individual phases will be recorded. If there's a preliminary approval, it would contemplate that final approval would go by phase. And the bond amounts would be established in the final approval for that stage based on whatever the numbers are at that time. It's the only way to do it that makes sense. The board would have to approve the bond, set the bond, the conditions of final approval on the bond gets funded or the work gets done. One of the one of those two alternatives. And that at the same time, the homeowners association covenants, there's an operation and maintenance plan that we've submitted to DEM. DEM's going to approve that. We've got an attachment placeholder in the homeowners documents for that operation and maintenance program to do everything that people have said, make sure that the holding tanks get tested and pumped out periodically. And the association takes responsibility for that. Owners are assessed on an annual basis. It's not quite like a condominium, but it's very similar to that. People have to do that in order to remain in standing with their financing and so forth. That was one of the overarching reasons that the board wanted community systems instead of individual systems, so that town wasn't looking to 140 different people to do what they're supposed to do. They're looking to one association that has pledged and leaned and whatever, everything, guaranteed basically that these things get done. So they're all good questions, but they're not things that the town already thought of and put in their checklists for preliminary and final approval, and that we've already started to submit. So I know there's other work to be done. People had other questions. I've got Ms. Rodian's address. I got a copy of the letter. Mr. Lanfair sent it to me. I'll provide the affordable. It's different levels based on what's considered affordable housing, what the earnings are for each home. So there's a different maximum sales price and for each of those. Right now, they range from 250,000 to 400,000, depending on what the income level is. So it's a lot different than it was 10 years ago.
Mr. Landry, thank you for your comforting words. I think the concern, I don't think I have to tell you this, we all know of examples where these wonderful plans that we strive to put in place just went to hell in a handbasket. We all know about those examples. Everybody's just concerned about the what ifs. We're not casting any dispersion on the fact that we know you're going to do all the right things in terms of documentation. But as was pointed out, sometimes you can't bring the horse to the water.
No, completely understood. Okay. And you're in the business, Mr. Chair. You understand how much better everybody has got in trying to minimize those.
That is true. That is true. That is true. Most of the examples that I'm referring to are in days gone by, but of course, those are the ones that stick in our mind. So getting back to the extension date, you mentioned October. Would it be reasonable to take the week after our October 6th planning board meeting, which would bring us to the 13th? Is that an agreeable date?
Yes, it is.
Okay, duly noted for the record.
Chairman, Jim Lanfair, town planner. In addition to that extension, I think the board needs to consider continuing this public hearing to a date certain.
Absolutely. Mr. Landry, would you care to offer a date that we should continue to that's reasonable rather than just pulling something out of thin air?
No, I would like to, I would ask that the matter be continued to the September agenda. We can report to the board more concretely responses to everything that's been raised. We have a transcript that's being developed. We intend to review it and address everything that's been, we may not have a complete answer to everything, but we'll address everything that we can address by September and try to take something that feels this big right now and maybe make it a little smaller. And I think that we have a better chance of getting that done if we're doing the work for 1 month from now instead of 2 months from now. Because as things turn out, you might not get much more if we wait until October. But if we did something in September and October, we can probably get where we're trying to go a lot more.
I understand. Very good. Thank you. Jim, September meeting going to work?
I think so.
Okay.
We'll make it work.
And are we starting at 6 o'clock all the time these days?
I think we need to.
6 o'clock it is. So when the time comes, the motion will be to continue to the date 9/1 at 6 p.m. So is there anything else on this application that the planning board needs to hear about? Otherwise, I would be prepared to entertain, I believe, a couple of motions if my notes are complete. A motion for peer review with the details to be fleshed out, and a motion to continue this to 9/1 at 6 PM. Maggie, do I have to close the public hearing before we do these motions, or is it afterwards?
So you want to leave the public hearing open till 9/1.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yep. Okay, very good. Yep, thank you. Okay, good. So if anyone is so inclined to make such a motion, that would be great.
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing to the September 1st meeting at 6 PM. And I will include also a recommendation that the planning board seek peer review of the engineering elements of the plan.
Very good. I have a motion.
I'll second.
I have a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Diorio, yes.
Reynolds, yes.
Lindell, yes.
Light, yes.
Shamshini, yes.
Outstanding. Very good. Thank you all, including those contributing. Appreciate that.
Do we need a motion for the extension to October?
I noted it for the record.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure we're on the same page, right? Maggie, I don't need a motion for that, do I?
No, it's on the record.
But thank you for keeping me honest. Okay, moving on. Solicitors report.
I'll take your.
Planners report.
Nothing to report, Mr. Chair.
Correspondence and updates. I see none. Date of our next regular meeting, September 1st. Everybody's okay with that? It's already been identified. If there's nothing else that can legitimately come before us, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
I have a motion. Second. I have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Diorio, yes.
Yes.
Light, yes.
Shamshini, yes.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you all in the audience for contributing.
Oh.
Keep in mind, we're still live.
We should just sit here till 10.
I can hit Jesse. I can hit Jesse Bell sitting in the background. You're not a sweet.
Yeah. No, my in-laws were in from Pennsylvania last weekend and I had put Etta James on. Is this Etta? I said, yes. You listen to Etta? No. Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much.
I'm beat.